ANC 1A to order at 7:03. And we will start with community announcements. Are there any announcements from ANC commissioners? Sure.
So I would actually just like to do an acknowledgement. For those who may not be aware, we are right in the middle of Teacher Appreciation Week. I will stress that every day should be Teacher Appreciation Day, but especially for this week. If you don't have kids in school, I urge you all to call up that teacher that got you where you are. I know that we all have at least one, if not many. So if you have a chance, give a shout out to your teachers this week.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Any other? Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let the community know I received a few complaints about trash issues at the Bruce Monroe Park that's located at 3000 Georgia Avenue near the community garden. I have been working with the New Communities Initiative as well as DPR and DGS to schedule regular trash collection. I know there's some bulk items there near the community gardens who are also working with the community gardeners on bulk trash collection, especially during composting time, practices around composting. So if you have any issues or complaints or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me directly.
Thank you. Are there any other? If not, anyone in the community that has an announcement, feel free. We have a microphone over here to my left, to your right. Feel free to line up behind it. Community announcements are generated about one minute or so. We don't, to be honest, we don't time it really well. But feel free to share.
Great. Sorry about that. First off, thanks for having me. I have the pleasure of knowing so many of the leaders here, and I'm really grateful for the relationships I have with you guys. My name is Matt McFarland. I'm the president of Georgia Avenue Thrive. We're an all-volunteer nonprofit working to make Parkview more connected, inclusive, and vibrant. Since October, I've been working with another group, the Georgia Avenue Pedestrian Safety Task Force, to understand community concerns in the neighborhood related to pedestrian safety. We talked to a lot of neighbors, and we found that the stretch of Georgia Avenue between Park Road and Kenyon Street is especially treacherous. We've heard stories of neighbors who were hit in these crosswalks or had to run across to get to the other side safely. We care about these neighbors, so we've gathered hundreds of signatures for a petition asking the city to install safety medians, bulb outs, and signals at Georgia and Lamont and Georgia and Morgan. These are two really tough places to cross. But this morning we got some tough news. In a letter from DDOT, it called for removing 4 crosswalks in Parkview. That includes all the crosswalks at Georgia and Morgan. There will no longer be crosswalks there. You can't find another intersection of comparable residential and commercial density that is without crosswalks in the city. So being a pedestrian on Georgia Avenue is already tough, and DDOT wants to make it even more painful. We're not crazy about that. And the wild thing is, DDOT knows how unsafe Georgia Avenue is. In a 2000 report, it said that in the 60s, the avenue was oriented more towards shuttling commuters between Maryland and downtown DC, rather than supporting and strengthening the local neighborhoods and retail establishments. 11 years later, the problems haven't been fixed. Other parts of Georgia Avenue have gotten pedestrian safety improvements like bulb outs. Parkview really hasn't gotten much. And now when we ask for help, DDOT wants to take our existing crosswalks away. So I encourage everyone here, I'd love to have you sign our petition, and I'd love to work with the great leaders at the ANC on a resolution to make sure that we move pedestrian safety forward, not backwards. So yeah, thank you. I apologize for going over on time.
Not a problem. Thank you. Are there any questions for? All right.
Hello, my name is John Hilligus. I'm the Constituent Services Coordinator for Councilmember Nadeau. My contact information is in the back. Feel free to take some, reach out with any questions you have. Just a few updates to some upcoming events. The next brand on your block where the council member comes out and just open office hours to talk about whatever issues are important to you is Thursday, May 24th at Heat to Spot. It's going to be a morning one, so at 8 a.m. So if you want to come down in your morning commute, we'll be there from 8 to 9:30. Amanda and I, the constituent services team, do mostly every week a walk throughout different neighborhoods where we pick up trash and report issues to 311. The community is invited to join. The next ones in ANC 1A will be Tuesday, May 29th in Columbia Heights. We'll be meeting at 14th and Irving at 5:45. And we'll be having one in Parkview on June 18th, meeting at Georgia and Columbia Road. And you can find all this information on briancanada.com/events. So hope to see you there. And then just 2 opportunities that we heard about that I want to share with the community in case you know anybody who might benefit from them. There is a free 8-week hospitality education program for people who might be looking for work at the Line Hotel this summer. So please have them reach out to me and I can give them that information. And there's also a program for youth 16 to 18 who may be failing out of school, and it's a program, I believe it's like a 22-week intensive program with a scholarship for up to $25,000. So if you know any youth who are really struggling in school and want to participate in this free program for a second chance, you can reach out to me and I can give them more information. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Molina. I'm here from the mayor's office. I'm her Ward 1 liaison. Just a couple of things that happened last week and that the mayor had. She kicked off the Summer Crime Prevention Initiative by celebrating the installation of the 10K private security camera funded through her administration private security camera incentive program. As many of you know, this program rebates for the purchase, installation, and registration of a security camera system on the exterior of a building owned or leased by a DC resident business, nonprofit, or religious institution. If you haven't done so, please, we encourage everyone to take advantage of it. And the flyer is in her newsletter, which is I left it in the back with how to contact and how to get more details. And on Friday, Mayor Bowser awarded over $2 million of Great Street Small Business Capital Improvement Reimbursement grants, and 53 businesses took advantage of this. Some that were in Ward 1 were the Habesha Markets, Harar Coffee, and Registry, Howard Deli, Johnny's Florist, A-List Cultivated Salon, Sticky Fingers Sweet and Eats, Sweaty Sea, Patrick's Pet Care, and many more. And just want to invite you guys to the Fun Parade, which will be on Saturday. And it starts at 4 p.m. and we're going to be meeting at the Howard Theater, 620 T Street Northwest. And then inside of her newsletter, I put her budget overview. Is a one-pager of everything that's going to be coming to Ward 1. I put a flyer for DC Fun Parade, and there's a translation in Spanish as well. There's a flyer that is translated in Spanish. And inside her newsletter, there's also information about the 35th Annual DC Senior Games, which is running from April 30th to May 14th. So make sure you go register. Registration is free for the first 300 seniors to sign up. So make sure you enjoy the games. And hopefully I'll see you at the Fun Parade.
Thank you, Sarah. Seeing no other announcements, I will say, Mr. Khan, I forgive me for saying this. Are you captain? Lieutenant? Lieutenant. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give you an on-the-spot promotion.
No.
Since you've been so new to PSA 409, this might be a good opportunity for you to say a few words. Let us know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So Lieutenant Sean Connors for PSA 409. So just to talk a little bit about what's going on lately at 409. Overall, violent crime was trending down, but over the last 30 days, we did have a pretty large spike in robberies, in particular robberies with guns. So it's, unfortunate. I hate to have to deliver that news, but that is what's going on right now. Specifically between the 13th Street and 16th Street, in that corridor there is where we've seen that spike. So one thing we've done, a couple things. We've got a couple officers that are going to be put on mountain bikes, and they're going to be specifically assigned to that area and a couple other areas within 409, Parkview, Newton, Quebec areas over there by the rec center. And they'll be able to kind of follow these trends a little bit. They're going to kind of be our response team. But they're definitely going to be in that corridor, specifically working on the robberies. The other thing is we have seen a reduction in burglaries is good. And those are the two major trends that we're kind of working with right now. We actually also have units from other districts that are coming over to help us. So there's a crime suppression team from the 2nd District and the 5th District. They're coming over to kind of assist us. So when I say a spike, I mean, if we're looking at a 30-day trend, the previous 30 days there was 2 robberies, and this past 30 days we had 7. So that's the kind of spike that we saw in 409. So we are getting some assistance with that, and obviously going into the summer, we want to address it quickly, rapidly, and get that under control. The only other thing I want to mention for 409, we're going to be doing a community outreach Sunday, May 20th. We're going to be doing a bike ride with local police officers. So these officers I'm referring to that are going to be on bikes working these areas, if you want to come out May 20th, it's going to be at 10 a.m. We're going to meet at the Parkview Rec, and they're going to basically go on a bike ride, and they're going to show you not only 409, kind of give you a tour of the PSA from their perspective. They're going to hit kind of all of our Sector 3, which includes 407 and 408 as well. It'll be like a 2-hour soft ride, not real hard, with breaks and stuff like that, and then we'll end at the Parkview Rec too. So if you want to kind of bike with the cop, kind of see the streets from their perspective, May 20th. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Lieutenant Collins, for coming. My question had to do with the robberies by gun. Is there particular days that this occur, and times of the day that these occur? That people can be more, I know they should be vigilant all the time, but when they need to be most especially vigilant?
Right. So, unfortunately for me, trying to solve this problem, it does make it tough because there isn't a particular day that looks stand out. But time frame is obviously after 8 p.m. That 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Time frame is when we get the most, for sure. But day of the week, no. But definitely that time frame. And I will say this too. Some of this is like rival crews, kind of robbing each other. But the one where we have just totally innocent victim walking down the street, a lot of times they're by themselves. So, obviously my recommendation is if you can, if possible, when you're walking late at night, try to walk in groups, 2, 3, 4, 5, especially if you're leaving a bar or something like that. You just don't want to kind of be on a side street. And definitely don't cut through alleys. I mean, some people cut through alleys for shortcuts and stuff like that. You want to avoid that too.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I've noticed a drastic increase in the number of people who actually use the alleys as opposed to the main streets, and I've always known that to be dangerous.
Yeah.
But they seem impervious to the dangers, the phones and talking, and they're not paying any attention, and it's very disheartening. And then they're the victims later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we definitely try to mention this as often as we can. It's being a hard target as opposed to a soft target. When one way to make yourself more difficult is obviously the phone is a big one. I mean, I see them too. People that walk in, they're texting, they're emailing on their phone, they're not paying attention. It's like a huge no-no. You just try not to do that. You really want to be paying attention to your surroundings. And then the alleys, you definitely want to try to avoid cut through the alleys. I was actually driving through right over here on 11th Street the other day, and I was flagged down by a young girl, and she said, "Do you mind?" I guess the entrance to her, she was renting a basement, and she had to go to the alley to get there. And so I kind of went through before she did. Sure enough, there was tons of people back there drinking and stuff like that. And this is actually kind of on the 302 side, so I let Lieutenant Hodge know about it. But yeah, but she was at least aware enough to know not to go back there by herself, which was good. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right, are you going to be here a while?
If you need me to, yeah.
No, I don't think we're going to have any questions, but I was thinking if anyone in the community has a question, if they could connect with you in the back.
Sure. I'll hang back there for 10 or 15 minutes or so. If anybody wants to come back and have a specific question.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. So, moving on to committees, is there an update from the Education Committee? Commissioner Miller?
The Education Committee did meet. We went over this year's FY19 budget, which, as I've mentioned before, has been very, very good to education, many other areas. Yay, election year. Another item that we brought up, and that I would actually welcome any input and support from the community, is many of our schools are having to supplement out-of-school time programming on their own. So that's either through parents providing coming out of pocket, which I'm sure as many of you know in our community, that's a difficult ask. And so many of our students go without arts, sciences, any of the basic things that many of us probably took for granted growing up. So we're looking for ways to form partnerships with program providers, but also looking at ways to start leveraging some of the programming that district agencies are offering. So for example, Department of Energy and Environment offers some great outdoor classrooms. The Commission for Arts and Humanity provides some wonderful art and education programming. And the many, many other outlets and opportunities. So I would certainly ask if anybody in the community has tapped into any of those resources. Please let me know. Please either contact me through my ANC account or please come to our next Education Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Transportation.
A few quick things. A small group of us met earlier this month. Just wanted to announce that we have a date on the books for a community-wide workshop with DDOT for Saturday, June 23rd. Time and location to be determined. We're going to be, DDOT really wants to focus on the 14th Street corridor, but also acknowledging all the side streets off of it and the traffic issues and pedestrian safety issues that's arising from said traffic. So I encourage you, if you're at all interested in transportation, to reach out to me, to community volunteers to help plan this. We have some great people at DDOT that we'll be working with, and I'll make sure to keep everyone informed on the Transportation Committee newsletter list of latest details.
Make sure you send to the issues.
Yeah, and please, if you have issues, send them our way. And first, always report them on 311 if you can, and send that 311 number to me so we can keep it at DDOT's feet with it. So, one other thing, if you take the 42 or 43, WMATA is considering changing the routes up. So that's what goes through Mount Pleasant, goes through Adams Morgan, down to DuPont, and then branches off into either Chinatown or Farragut. There are some proposed changes to those routes that they're trying to feel out what the community is thinking about them. So if you didn't already, grab an agenda in the back, and I made sure to put the links to the survey that they have set up. It's 4243changes.questionpro.com. It goes through what the proposed changes are. Make sure you have your voice heard there so they have an idea of what people are thinking. And if you want to reach out to me or Commissioner Love Wade, and also, we'll be supporting something based on the feedback that we hear from you. So let us know. And that's it. Thank you.
Just a quick question on the 4243, which I enjoyed writing to get my haircut the other day. Something had to get me from Farragut Square. So, where can people go to find this information out if they don't have electronic access?
didn't know about this until last week.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm happy to print these out for people,
Okay.
but if Wilmata has not done a good job getting cleared up about this.
You know, this reminds me, Commissioner Wade, of the bus on Sherman that they tried to push over to 11.
And
You
I
know?
wanted to comment on that. Metro will absolutely listen to the squeaky wheel. They wanted to double the ridership, the number of buses going up 11th Street during the rush hour. No, all day,
Yeah, all day.
all day.
Okay.
Double the capacity and double the number of buses. As small as 11th Street, as small as the yards are, how close those homes already are to the street. And we wouldn't have it. And so if there's anything in this 42, 43, it's a crawl in your throat, you just let us know. We're not gonna have it.
I know that from following the listservs, Adams Morgan, many people are upset about this there. So I know that commission will take this up. I expect Mount Pleasant will take this up. And while it's not officially in our jurisdiction, it comes extremely close. And it is something that's very useful to people living in Columbia Heights. So.
Well, also, excuse me, what would happen, what does happen, is they will then shift it ever so slightly to maybe encroaching our
Yeah. So.
And one of the proposals is to divert some of that 42, 43 traffic to an all-day H1, which does cut right through,
Yeah.
right through our SME. So,
This is what I'm talking about, yes. On that street that we're already experiencing, Columbia and Urban, where we're already experiencing horrendous traffic patterns.
Yeah, I think it's valid for all of us. This is what I would encourage you is to, I'm sure you're already doing it, but reach out to whatever transportation committee is going on in the other ANCs. We should speak with one voice on this. All right, public safety. Do we have someone to speak on the public safety committee? No? Okay. We can say it. For the Public Space and Parks Committee, at the last meeting, which was last week, we decided that the committee will regularly meet on the third Tuesday of the month. It may not happen this month because we're trying to get on a regular cycle and we don't want the meetings too close together. But if you're interested in things like the plaza, management of streetscapes, parks, playgrounds, school, athletic fields, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is 1808@anc.dc.gov, and I'll get you hooked into that. This is a relatively new committee. It's already starting to look at some important issues. One of the things we started to talk about was the Bad Saint Public Space Sidewalk Cafe proposal. We didn't come to a conclusion to make a recommendation because we didn't feel we had enough input, but we were able to identify some areas of concern that need to be discussed. So we will get to those later tonight. Moving on to presentations. There are my eyes. Tivoli's Astounding Magic Supply Company, 826 DC.
Hello.
I will say I miss you when you were across the street.
The Museum of Natural History.
Yeah, I miss that.
We miss it too sometimes. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Caroline Odom, and I'm here representing 826 DC and Tivoli's Astounding Magic Supply Company, Illusionarium, and Deluxe Haberdashery. That's our full name that we don't use very often, and I'm here to, you might have heard of our youth writing programs, and you might also have heard of our store that we have right at the intersection of Park and 14th. I'm here to clear up some of the confusion of the identity of those two and how they connect. 826 DC is a nonprofit tutoring center located in the Tivoli Theater Building just above Zeeburger. So our entrance is in between Zeeburger and Giant if you're walking along the street there.
We focus on helping students develop their writing skills, and all of our after-school and weekend workshops are free and available for families who are looking for extracurricular activities or academic support. And you're welcome to visit a260c.org and sign up for any of those programs. Again, they're all free. We also maintain a retail space, which is a magic novelty shop. Can be a fun destination for parents to bring their kids. On top of that, 100% of the proceeds support our programs, keeping them free for families and teachers. If we do our job well, it's not only a sustainable source of funding for the organization, but a space for the community to come learn about the services that we offer. Since our goal is to be as welcoming to the community as possible, we put together a short survey to get your input on how we can make our retail space more inviting and financially sustainable. So the link to that, I believe, is in the online version of this, of today's agenda, and I also have slips of paper that have the link with all of our information in the back, if you don't mind picking up a slip on your way out. So your answers will help us serve that greater mission of helping students develop their writing skills necessary to share their stories with confidence, which is something that we really believe is important. I've also brought some of our publications, since there's a publishing aspect to our work. Those are free in the back if you'd like to take one and look through it. We have been fortunate to work with many students who actually go to Harriet Tubman, and one of our programs takes place here. It's a Saturday literacy program, so we are fortunate to partner with this community. We are so happy to serve the students here, and we look forward to continuing that partnership with you all. Thank you so much again for your time.
Just one question for me. Hamid Ashri, what do you vend?
We have a few hats, and if you come around Halloween, we have even more than just magic hats. We have other hats for your costuming needs. Yes.
I'm sold. Thank you. Next is presentation of BZA case 19770 355410. Oh yeah, that does. Yep. And just to be clear, this is being presented to us this month, but I recall we're voting on the case next month. So this is just an informative presentation.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Omid Hekmat, and I'm with Madison Investments. We're a development company that's local in DC. You may know us from our project on 11th and Monroe, where we did the Coop, and we have some condos above that. So we're pretty familiar with this submarket, and we've done a few projects here. We're here today in front of you to present a small 3-unit renovation project that we have in the pipeline. We're going in front of the BCA next month for a small special exception to add a 3rd unit. We are not adding any more density or anything above what's allowed. We're just asking to be able to increase the occupancy by 1. To kind of mitigate some of the concerns about parking and with new density, we applied for a curb cut with DDOT, and we got that approved. So we're adding a parking space to the site to offset the added unit, and everything else about the project is a matter of right. We have support from our immediate neighbor on the left, who is directly adjacent to our property and connected to our building. There are no other properties that directly touch our building. However, we are going to be reaching out to them before the next ANC hearing. I apologize, we only brought smaller sets for the commissioners, and we have a 11 by 17 set here, so if anyone from the community would like to see the plans, we'd be happy to show them to you in the back after we go through the presentation. But Shada, our architect, will walk through the plans and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I'm here as well.
Good evening, everyone. I won't take too much time. Just quickly, as Omid said, we are not going higher than the existing height, and we are trying to keep the integrity of the design of this existing building. And we are basically, this is the existing, and we are basically adding, making 3 changes. One of them is adding a side bay and keeping the material as the existing. Just it's a colored brick, and we will keep that. we'll keep the roof as is, so to keep the integrity and aesthetic of the design, and we will keep the front porch, just adding a deck above it. And the big change will be just adding the square footage on the rear of the building, which we are trying to don't exceed the 10 feet by the code from the neighbor. So we are right under 10 feet, and compared to the existing of this building, we are just going back a couple of feet. So if there are any questions on, as we did like sun study and shadow study, and there are no major changes on the neighboring buildings, especially because the addition is on the rear side, is on the north side, is not on the. So that we have shadow study on the building if anyone wants to see them later, and on the elevation, we are keeping the front elevation as is exactly, and we are just using the front porch as a deck. And on the side, as you see here, we are keeping the existing materials, as I told you, and keeping the existing roof here. The only difference is the new addition, which has a different identity, but we're trying to keep the whole building as more as possible like existing.
All right. Commissioner Brown, I think you had a question. I know I do.
Have you reached out to the abutting neighbors, and are they?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we reached out to the neighbor that's directly adjacent to us, and we have a support, and we'll supplement our application with that letter for the next ANC presentation. We also are working with him, as he's a longtime resident of that neighborhood, to reach out to the neighbors and get their feedback as well. So we're hoping to do that between now and next month's hearing.
I actually have a comment more related to the rear addition. I'm not opposed to the rear addition, but it seems like it's not, it doesn't strike me as being that tied into the main structure, and it's not just the change in material, but my first thought is it seems like a cube in Tetris that just fell next to the building. Is there any way, is there anything you could do with the upper portion of that, whether it's an appearance of a pitched roof or anything that would make it seem more in keeping with, you know, it just seems like all of a sudden the roof line just becomes this jarringly jagged.
So we can look into that for sure. I know one of our design intents was to make the addition feel as kind of a separate piece of the building, yeah, and kind of leave the existing building kind of as close as we can to what it was originally like. We thought the contrast was kind of nice. In this elevation, you can't really see the coloring, and the paneling and the fenestration is not final yet, so it may look a little bit rough still. But we'll definitely explore options where we incorporate that and let you know what we come up with.
Okay.
So you're adding 2 new entrances on the side street?
Yes, we are. So originally, this is a 1-unit row home, and the entrance was off 10th Street. We now have that original entrance for 1 unit, and then we have 2 more entrances on the side for the two units that we're adding.
So I'm looking at the picture of the existing house, and I see a little add-on, little 1-story add-on in the back. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So
expanding that, or
yeah. So there.
in addition to that.
So there's already a piece in the back that sticks out. We're just slightly bumping back and above that, and it's within the zoning requirement of the lot occupancy and height and setbacks and so forth. So the only thing we're asking for from the BCA is just an occupancy increase from 2 to 3 units.
And you say DDOT already approved the curb cut?
Yes, they have.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, without coming to us, they did a curb
Well,
cut?
they probably sent something, but I don't know if Sharon saw it.
Yeah, our civil engineer submitted that application before, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago.
So, for your convenience, the community is using three parking spaces.
They're losing one space, I believe.
Well,
For the curb
even
cut.
if you're losing one space and you're gaining one space, it may seem balanced, but what you're doing when you remove one space of public parking is you're actually restricting public space and privatizing a otherwise public parking space, so it's really not a positive to the community. I know it's very, very convenient for the person who lives there, but it's not a positive for the community. Also, it further covers what would otherwise be green space. So, but you said that's already been approved.
Sorry about that.
It's
So
okay.
if you say you are doing the properties, I would appreciate you making sure when you consider curb properties, curb cuts, that you make sure the ANC Commission is on board with it. I'm not happy about that at all.
Sure.
We don't normally do that, and it's not fair to the rest of the residents for preferential treatment for some developers and not others. I hope you see our position.
Sure, we weren't trying to sidestep any process. We just followed the DDOT guidelines
Yeah, I
and
know,
responded to
I hear
comments.
it all the time, I know. Good, thanks.
All right, well, are there any other initial comments from commissioners? Then we will see you next month. Please work with Commissioner Farmer, take some of the comments you've heard tonight, see if there's anything there you can work with, and thank you for giving us an initial review.
Thank you for your time.
There's one other presentation that's not on here. Ms. Fashbaum, would you please give us a brief overview of what's going on with Abra, or however you pronounce it?
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Fashbaugh. I'm the Community Resource Officer with the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. If you don't know what we do, we issue and renew licenses that allow for the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol in the district. So if you've been to a restaurant and consumed an alcoholic beverage, or you purchased alcohol at a market, we license those establishments. The reason I'm here today, well, two main things. One, I want to make sure that everybody is calling the enforcement hotline number when they have an issue with a liquor licensee. We do cover a lot of the concerns that the community has. These things include operating beyond approved hours, trash, failure to comply with settlement agreements. That number is 202-329-6347, but I left my business cards in the back, and on the back of my business card I tacked on our enforcement hotline number. So we have 3 teams of investigators that are working 7 nights a week, so you can call us and let us know. You can also let me know and I can follow up with them. The other thing is, next year is a really big year for Abra and also for the community, because all on-premises establishments are up for renewal. An on-premises establishment is an establishment where you can consume alcohol on the premises. The reason why you should care about this is because if you have any issues with current licensees, maybe you think they're no longer appropriate for your neighborhood, this is your chance to get involved, or at least let your commissioner know that you have any concerns and they can talk about possibly protesting these establishments. So I'll be here for another matter, but I just wanted to keep you all aware that we do have these ways to get involved, and please consider using them. So business cards in back.
Are there any questions for Ms. Fashbaum at this time? I know you will be here when we discuss another matter later.
One quick thing that affects the commissioners. You did receive a notice for Liquor Factory. We're going to rescind that notice. You can just ignore that.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Liquor Factory, it's a Class B market. They wouldn't even be selling liquor. We're rescinding that notice. So.
Okay. So, you mean when I get... So
You
the
should have
Liquor
received
Factory
notice
is not
about it
selling
last
liquor.
week.
Okay. I don't know. I looked at the address, and if it's north, I don't know where this one was, but if I just see the address and it's something...
3109 Georgia.
Yeah, that's south of me, 3109 Georgia. That would be maybe Commissioner Brown.
Just ignore that notice.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Commissioner Barczyk, can you take the roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Barron. Present. Commissioner Wright-Smith. Not present. Commissioner Ibarchek, present. Commissioner Mortazavi, not present. Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Castillon. Commissioner Farmer, not present. Commissioner Bass. Here. Commissioner Holmes. Here. Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Lovelace.
Present.
Commissioner Hubbard, not present. We have quorum.
All right, there was much rejoicing. Setting the agenda, I've had some requests to move some of the issues around. Would commissioners have any problem if we swapped the Bad Saint permit from 3 to 1 and the B22759 IHOP from 1 to 3, just switch those two? No problem. Okay, so we'll do it that way, so that we can make sure we get to it before people leave. With those two adjustments, I would move that we approve the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, we have 8 tonight. Sorry, count. Okay, for the consent agenda, we have several items on there. Approval of the prior minutes, April 2018. Approval of an existing non-conforming curb cut at 3043 15th Street. Approval of the quarterly financial report. Letter of support for amplified background music at the Columbia Heights Civic Plaza for a series starting June 15th, 29th, July 20th, 27th. And letter of support for the Family Unity, March for Family Unity on May 26th. If there's no objection, I would move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second.
They moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic. All right, moving on to official business. Let's go to the Sidewalk Cafe for Bad Saint, which was formerly number 3. So, to have 8. I actually brought some plans so that people know what we're looking at. Forgive me for recycling paper. It's my way. All right, Commissioner Castillon, this is in your single member district. Would you like to introduce it?
So thank you for organizing the conversation at the last Parks and Public Space meeting around this. And I know that we wanted to bring it back up again just to make sure that everybody in the community had a chance to raise any concerns, support, specifically at this meeting tonight. For those of you who were able to attend the last meeting of Parks and Public Space, it sounds like we have some concerns over sanitation and sidewalk accessibility. Some concerns with sidewalks and sanitation, and I know that you all had some conversation about it. I don't know if you want to add anything that I missed from the last meeting.
Sure. So I think at the Parks and Public Space meeting, there was general support for a sidewalk cafe for Bad Saint. What was really the focus of concern was that already the establishments, Room 11 in Bad Saint, they're contributing to, I mean, they're difficult buildings for trash removal. They are contributing a bit to the rat population due to management issues. So there's concern that increased seating will have increased food disposal. There is concern that with the planters where they are, even with a 6-foot clearance, that turns it into about a 4-foot clearance. And so that then begs the question of where do people line up, as people want to do for this restaurant already? if we're restricting the sidewalk and then you have a line of people waiting for them to open, do we really have a 4-foot sidewalk that makes it difficult for wheelchairs and strollers? The other issue that kind of came up near the end of the meeting in reading the notes, it seems that there is an intent to use this space 12 months out of a year with some kind of enclosure. We don't have enclosures on this block at this time, and so that's something we should really think about. Is this a summer garden, or is this in addition to a building in the front? So, and then one issue that's since been brought to my attention is that it appears that to get to the 10, is it 10? Yeah, to get to the 10 seats in front, they may actually be using some of the space in front of the building next door to come up with the correct ratio of sidewalk to seating. And that could be right, because I do recall in front of room 11, they don't go 3 seats deep, they only have room for 1 table and a chair, so they have 2 tops right next to the building. So that's a long way of saying I think there's general support for that Saint, there's general support for a sidewalk cafe, but there are some outstanding questions that we don't have answers to, which makes it difficult to figure out how we should address this.
My main concern,
Yes, Commissioner Lee?
my main concern is also the access to the restaurant. Now, I'm always in favor of equity, and there's seating in front of room 11 on the side. But Saint has a totally different situation because every day there's a lineup starting around 4:30 for admission into the restaurant. And so if you have tables out there, where would people line up? We absolutely cannot authorize them to line up in front of any other businesses. We can't authorize them to line up around the alley or out on the, in the street. So there's nowhere for them to really line up. I just don't understand unless they change their seating process. There's no way I can support impeding the sidewalk like that. And let's not forget, everybody loves a dog. Dogs walking up and down that sidewalk. Leaving no room for pedestrians and them and tables. It's really kind of bad.
Well, I think the way we left it at the committee is that this needed a more robust community conversation, which is why we're here. We had 3 options. In general, there's the option of approving this as submitted. There's the option of opposing it. There's also the option of, is there something you could support that's maybe 8 seats instead of 10, or you know, something. So those were the things that were left on the table.
So, and I think we actually have an opportunity to address some of these concerns at a meeting that is scheduled tomorrow at the Coop 9:30 with the owners of Bad Saint, and I know some community members here in the audience are actually going to be attending that meeting with me. Those who are directly impacted by sidewalk accessibility and sanitation. Just wondering if we could just give them a moment to say a few words.
Sure, absolutely. So, come on up, you're the next contestant.
Oh wow, I feel short. Okay.
It bends down.
That's also loud.
Okay. Thanks. I live right next door to Bad Saint. I share a property line with Bad Saint, Room 11, and Bloom Bars. And as Commissioner Castaño and I don't know how to say your last name, Kent.
It's all about the base. There you go.
As
You'll
they-
never forget it now.
As they mentioned, there is for me, from my perspective as the adjacent neighbor, a sanitation concern because I am sort of the highway of rodents that navigates that block in my yard, and I'm constantly finding bones, dead rats, things of that nature in my yard. And I understand that living in a city, you have to deal with some of that, but it's sort of, on a daily basis, I'm finding something new in my yard, and they're digging holes in my garden and all this stuff. So when I found out about the patio, my immediate concern was there's going to be more trash. How is that going to be handled? The area behind Bad Saint is very small, very constrained, so they don't have room for traditional like metal dumpsters. They have regular large plastic bins. So that's really my concern, that I'm hoping that we can chat with the owners of Bad Saint tomorrow at the Coop and find a path forward. But love Bad Saint. You look forward to having more seats so that I don't have to wait in line so long. But I would like to address this issue so that I don't have to scoop up quite as many dead rats. Thanks.
Thank you. Before you leave, do you have, just to take this opportunity, do you have an outcome that you would like to see?
I was thinking,
as an abutting neighbor.
Right. I don't know. I was thinking about that as I was sitting there. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not a sanitation expert, but I would hope that there is something that can be done to minimize the amount of rodents. And I'm fairly active about plugging up holes when I see them and calling the Department of Health, and they come out and bait. So I'm also a partner in this, I guess. But I don't know. I don't run a restaurant. I don't run a sanitation consultancy, so I don't know what the right solution is to minimize the problem.
That's fair.
I would just encourage you to think about it a little. Having lived near a restaurant myself, one option might be to have more frequent trash removal, but you should think about what that means for noise and other solutions as well.
So I will say, because I've been in contact with both Room 11 and Bad Saint for a while, and they did increase their trash removal. I believe they have trash removal every day now. So again, I think it's really more about how constrained their back of house area is. If this was like a new building on 14th Street in DC, USA, they have the room to deal with all this trash. They have places to put this stuff, and because this is an older building and they have very little alley access and everything is so limited. I know they've done things in the past to try to alleviate, but now I just want to have, I guess, more heads in it to see if we can come up with a better solution.
Works with me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm actually just somebody that walks by this restaurant on a frequent basis, so when I saw the plans at the Public Space Committee meeting, I stared at them for quite a long time because something just didn't seem right. If you look very closely in the fine print in the upper left-hand side, it says that the Sidewalk Cafe is 163 square feet. Now, if you look at the space where the chairs are, there's no way that's 163 square feet. They're actually counting all the way from property line to property line and then out about 10 feet. That's enough to allow them to have the 10 seats. But then they're squeezing them into the 63, 65 square feet that's there, which is what's requiring them to get a variance from the 10-foot walkway to the 6-foot, as Commissioner Wade pointed out. My bigger concern overall is if they are allowed to do this, and then eventually they're going to come back and say, oh, we want to use this planter area over here for whatever business ends up taking that space. And then currently on the right side, those are vacant. So they're going to become restaurants probably in the future. They're also going to want to come out 10 feet. So effectively you will have no sidewalk from the alleyway all the way up to room 11. And as we've already pointed out, there'd be nowhere for the line to go. So, thank you.
No, I think this is a design problem.
I'm not for giving up more public space. You guys know that. I just think that enough is enough is enough. And we have these regulations in place for a purpose, for the good of the bulk of the people, not for the convenience of the
and as I was mentioning earlier, so in the notes at the top, which they're kind of hard to read, number 3, about halfway through, it says removable enclosing structure. So that it's a temporary structure, but is to remain erect and is not to exceed. So it's like an addition, right? So that part, I mean, I'll be honest. It's a great business. It's a great draw. I don't begrudge them a sidewalk cafe. I'm not so sure I'm on board with a structure, because that's something we don't have anywhere on 11th Street. I mean, I get your point that it's like squeezing a balloon, and every time someone takes a little bit more, the public space is squeezed even harder. But then it's above and beyond that. That I think the sad thing is, in my opinion, what would be ideal is if they just blew out. Well, if they blew out the wall and they took the space to the south, then they combined the tax lots and they built a second story.
Well, at least 5 buildings to be divided.
Well, but I think they already control that.
Well, then build in there.
That's what I'm saying.
Instead of out into public space.
Anyway, so I'm torn on this. Commissioner Castellon, do you have an opinion on how you'd like to proceed?
So I also want to add that I did receive quite a few letters of support for the cafe from the community, and I also have a letter from the owners, Nick and Genevieve, that I sent around. It's really long, so I don't think I'm going to read it out here, but for anyone who wants to read it, I have it. So I'm proposing that we kind of see how tomorrow goes. Again, there are going to be those who are directly impacted by the Sidewalk Cafe at the meeting tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. at the Coop. Any of you here who are directly impacted or very passionate about this issue are welcome to join in the conversation. I think we can address these issues in tomorrow's meeting. I know that Batsang also has a settlement agreement that addresses some of these issues as well. So I'm really confident that we can reach a place that meets all of our needs.
Well, no, they're not available till tomorrow. Apparently, they're in Chicago right now. So here's the puzzle. Is DDOT public space permits generally give the ANC 30 days to respond. So tabling it means we wouldn't get to respond. I mean, my question is, has anyone had a similar situation and been able to get an extension out of DDOT?
I have not, but I was going to request that we can have an extension. I don't know if that's rooted in regulation that is required of us to stick to the 30 days, but I'm wondering if we can reach out to DDOT to make a special request.
Sorry, so I already reached out, and I'm waiting for DDOT to respond.
Thanks.
No problem. I will update you. I tried. God, that was a nice comment. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, you're not used to compliments?
Right. I will update you once I hear from them. But I wrote to them last week, and I followed up today. And if I don't hear a response, I'm gonna call by Friday to get an answer.
So Sarah, I said you were used to me.
Huh?
I said you were used to me, not to the compliments.
Yeah. Well, you toughened me up.
I also thought, if I remember correctly, in the permit section, there's the ANC's opportunity to comment, but I believe that there's a separate category for just the commissioner to comment. So, while obviously I think it would be great to have the delay, I have asked for a delay in the past and received no response. The next time I'm going to contact you. But worst comes to worst, it sounds like you would at least have an opportunity to comment as the commissioner.
So that's, the deadline for the comments was April 26th, and at that time, looking at the plans and seeing that they actually were meeting all of the requirements and regulations, I had approved the permit for 10 spaces. And the concerns that I heard from the community, unfortunately, just did not get to our desk, this podium, these committees, until after that deadline, but it's not too late. It's really not too late, and I believe that we can address all of these issues, again, at tomorrow's meeting, 9:30 at the COOP, for those of you who are passionate about this and directly impacted.
Okay, I just need someone could suggest a motion of how we want to deal with this so that we can send in the ANC's questionnaire. I mean, do we ask for an extension to permit time? Because I think one way or another we need to enumerate the concerns that need to be addressed, just so that they're aware of it.
I would not feel comfortable moving forward until this meeting happens, and I would suggest, I would kind of yield to the S&D commissioner to make the motion, but I would suggest that we table this issue for next month and request for an extension. And our mayor's office, I really hope that you can add some pressure onto DDOT because the agency not being responsible is unacceptable.
Well, and to add to that, I know I've asked for this before, but 30 days is not acceptable. We get far more time from a zoning variance. We get far more time from a zoning case. We actually get time to represent the community's best interests, and DDOT doesn't give us that opportunity. Because while Commissioner Castagnon said that the date that DDOT set came and went, we did not get this until the day after our last meeting. So it's not like this came the day before and we could have considered it. Okay, I know you will do your best. Okay, so then I guess what we can do is Commissioner Castellano, do you want to make a motion or do you want to let me do it?
Yes, I can do this. I move that we table this decision until we have more information, which I know we will get tomorrow, and also wait on whether or not we can get granted an extension. So I move that we table the issue.
Okay. Then moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, now moving on to the settlement agreement for Kraken Access, which has been a lively month. I guess I will set this up a little bit. So, over the last month, there's been a series of conversations, most of them by email. There was one meeting at the establishment. There have been a number of phone calls and emails with me personally. And we have a proposed settlement agreement, which I will hand out here and which has been distributed to members of the community on North Street in advance. So what we are considering, and then we will move to the owners and neighbors to speak, is an agreement whereby the proposed hours of operation are full hours for inside the building. For the summer garden, 9 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. For live entertainment, inside to 1 a.m., outside, stopping at 9 p.m. There is language addressing music, noise, privacy. I know that, let's see, and I'll let you all go through this while the presentations are going on. Well, the 9 a.m. isn't a big issue for me personally. I mean, DC Reynolds opens at 9 a.m. I'll tell you, Midlands could open at 9 a.m. They might get some people. Okay, there's language for entertainment, what it is. There's language for public space and trash. I know one of the issues was capacity. I believe the way this is written is capacity for the summer garden would be no more than 300 or certificate of occupancy, whichever is less. And with that, I will let people address the specific areas or concerns that they have. I'll start with the business owners, and then we'll move into members of the community. One thing I would like to say up front is I do thank Anna and Stu for your consideration and some of the changes, particularly those that you've been agreeable to in the last couple of days. I would also really like to thank the neighbors for your engagement, for speaking up, for working with each other and not necessarily against each other. So I think that while there were significant areas that still may be where there's great concern or has been concern, it has actually been productive. So with that, we'll go to Anna and Stu, and then we'll move to members of the community. You're welcome to use the microphone. It actually works. So I will say while they're coming up, the main area where most of the focus was the summer garden. And as you all may recall, the former parking lot of Murray's is on the side of the building, so it's not just on Georgia Avenue, it's also on Morgan. So, yeah. So I'll let you start.
Sure. I think the settlement agreement, a lot of the changes that we went back and forth on with the community addressed a number of the concerns. I think one thing that we have heard over the last few days, and I think that we just want to be super clear on, I talk with my hands. The summer garden, everyone I think is envisioning it as the Murray's lot as it currently exists. I think one thing that we want to help people envision, and those who have stopped by and who have had a chance to see some of the initial drawings, one of the things that we want to help people to understand is even in the settlement agreement there are parking spaces that we contractually have to have and that we have an obligation to have anyways. A lot of those and a lot of the infrastructure for the summer garden and things like dry storage for the business as a whole and cold boxes where large refrigerators. We are putting all of that infrastructure in a way where it would be towards the Morton side of the street. So if you think of and you can envision the property and you can envision the giant roll-up door in the back, that's where parking is going to be. And so we are doing that very intentionally, and we are putting storage moving towards Georgia Avenue right off of that parking spaces very intentionally in order to push patrons who will be at the establishment to the Georgia Avenue side of the building and of the summer patio. In addition to having all of the noise mitigated fencing along Morton Street as well and on Georgia Avenue. And so from a vision standpoint, and I know there were concerns about capacity, by the time you put in, space for dumpsters that we legally have to have and 5 parking spaces, and anyone can envision how large cold storage is, and storage sheds for things like lumber, things that we need to functionally be business. Realistically, you're looking at a patio space that is drastically less than what is there as just straight asphalt. So if anyone has been by and they see the shipping container, really the edge of the shipping container towards Georgia Avenue is about where people would start to be to sit. So when you think about it from a capacity standpoint, it's a greatly reduced capacity from even the 300 number. One of the reasons we were really encouraged to put in a number like 300 was mainly specifically because of some of the community programming that we do have every intention of working with partners to do. For instance, we are working with District Bridges to host a movie night, and a lot of those do have more than, say, 100 people who attend. And so if they really want to have it to be more, sort of, I call it festival style seating, where people bring blankets and such. Capacity, realistically, if people are sitting on blankets, is going to be more than 100 people. So that's one of the reasons why we were encouraged to put in a number that would accommodate events like that, even if they aren't the reality of what the everyday business will most likely be. And so if there are other questions that anyone has regarding regarding our plans or regarding, changes that we have been in talks with the community to make to the settlement agreement, more than happy to answer them.
Sure. One thing that would help, do you have a rough draft of what the garden may look like so that commissioners, maybe you could pass it down?
And what's the inside occupancy? Has been determined here.
The inside occupancy that was listed on the application is 500. It would likely be less than that.
So, but we're talking still gross 800. 300 outside, 500 inside. Gross capacity.
That's currently, but likely not reality once it's built out. But that's what's on, yes.
And what you can see to address some of those concerns is you can see and I think the folks who came to the community meeting, the axe arenas actually take up a significant portion of space, but technically from the fire marshal standpoint, they're saying that people could stand in those lanes, but from a functional business standpoint, we are not going to have people standing in the lanes of the axe arenas. But from an occupancy standpoint, that's what they're taking into consideration when coming up with a number.
Sure.
I just wanted to confirm this. So you won't be serving any food or having food trucks there?
So our goal is to eventually have food service. The plans right now are not to put in a commercial kitchen on the inside of the space.
The kitchen will be outside.
Will be outside.
Will there be axe throwing outside?
If we do have axe throwing outside, one of the things that we agreed with the community is that any of that activity would cease by 9 o'clock.
That's about 20 days out there for axe.
No, wait, 20, no 20 days.
So these are, this is inside, this is outside.
This is outside. These are
outside.
So these are, if you give you approximately 6, you're putting no more than 12 people. So they 24 hours. So arena wise, you're looking at 2.5.
I have to say something that I think is probably on a lot of people's minds, that some of the concerns about mixing alcohol and throwing axes extend beyond the scope of this agreement. Just safety-wise.
I guess I can address that pretty quickly. Have you done it?
I don't actually think that's relevant here.
Well, in all honesty, I mean, it's not much different than throwing darts, right? So there's a lot of games inside, drinking and eating facilities, and each one of our lanes and every one of our group sessions is coached with what we would call a referee or an axe master who's overseeing everything and making sure that there's a safe environment for all patrons, all staff throughout the facility.
I mean, I assumed it just crossed your mind. I just felt the need to raise it.
Well, and respectfully, safety is a huge consideration for us. It's one of the reasons why we go through a huge safety training component before anyone is ever even allowed to touch an axe in the facility. It's something we take very seriously from a business perspective.
And I think anybody, I know a few people in the room have been to the facility, they can see how seriously we've taken not only insurance and safety, but I know a few of the neighbors have come in and thrown, and they were kind of at first, is this dangerous, is this scary, what is it? And then they were like, oh, it's not as crazy as it sounds once you do it.
Okay, well, while we're looking at this, I'd like to hear from some members of the community specifically, because I know they've been looking at various versions of the agreement and they've been part of the conversation. And just so the commissioners know, this is version 11. Just putting it out there. I'd kind of like to hear if there's still concerns, what those concerns are, if there's any support, just the gamut.
I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see what the lady's name with the burgundy shirt is.
Commissioner Barry.
Thank you. That's exactly what's been going through our minds, is the alcohol plus the access. I want to recognize Mr. Bass for all the time and all the effort he's put into emailing back and forth and being really available and very helpful with the neighborhood. And I think our question really is, and this is a question for you as well, so I'm really happy that you stayed for us. Part of my question is a process question, because you're granting an alcohol license, but who is talking about how you license an axe-throwing business? And I appreciate Stu and Anna's working with the community to try and come up. But Anna, you just said if there's axe throwing outside, we asked you to not have axe throwing outside, and that was one of the things that you vociferously denied in the settlement agreement negotiation process, and told us that there will be axe throwing outside. So my question in all of this is, how do we get told as a community that we on a residential street will have axe throwing business going on with alcohol involved? And I recognize that a lot of the things that Stu and Anna are doing are going to be helping with all the other concerns, the parking and the leaving of the premises. But quite frankly, that the whole axe throwing thing, and I'm really glad to see Lamont Street neighbors here, it's really noisy. I mean, and it sounds really fun, to tell you honestly, it sounds really fun, but it's thunk, thunk, yay, thunk, thunk, yay, all day long, on however many hours that they agree that they're going to do it. So it's going to be a huge hit noise-wise, and I get that there isn't the sound fence up yet, but I think our thing as neighbors is there are so many unknowns here. How do you start an axe throwing business without any oversight of any public body? I mean, it just is, right? We're going to throw axes. And then after you start the axe throwing and you've come to this settlement agreement after a lot of work on everybody's parts, what happens if it's really as untenable to all of those neighbors there that we think it's going to be? Human beings are not something you can put a decibel meter on. You can put decibel meter on amplified music, but thunk, thunk, yay, thunk, thunk, yay, thunk, thunk, yay. And I'm gonna yield the floor to Kristen because she's right there and she's gonna hear it.
Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening to the community's concerns. I want to say thank you to Kent, to Mr. Bass for his tireless work on the settlement agreement, and thanks to Anna and Stu for engaging in a conversation with us around this. I think to address the concerns about axe throwing, I've actually done axe throwing, not there, but in Pittsburgh, and which is where I'm from. And it was super, I'm not opposed to the concept inside. It was a blast. We had a great time. We did it for someone's 15th anniversary party, which was really funny. But, I think most of the community's concerns come from the plans for the summer garden and the noise associated with that, and what I feel like are constantly shifting details. I feel like every time we come to a meeting, I hear something different. We might have this, we might have that. We're gonna, the first time they came here, they didn't talk about outdoor arenas. We only heard about it when we went to the community meeting. Now they're saying maybe that won't happen, maybe that will happen. Now there's gonna be an outdoor kitchen. I just feel like it's really hard for us to make a decision and to either feel supportive or not when I don't really feel like we have an honest, clear picture of what that's gonna be. And it really, I'm mostly concerned about noise and disruption even though 12 a.m. and again, thank you for, I thank them for working with us and moving from the originally proposed 2 to 3. But I get up at 5:30 a.m. every day. If I go to bed at midnight, the only time I get to go to sleep is after they close down at midnight. That's 5 hours of sleep a night. And it's just, that it's the outside area that I think the neighborhood is finding sort of untenable and unclear.
Matt again. I've spoken to a number of the neighbors. There are 7 of them that live directly across, and so a few of them couldn't be here tonight. And so for Dan and Tina, I can say that they have a young child who sleeps in the front bedroom. Their child goes to bed at 10 o'clock. They've seen the agreement. They are supportive of the agreement that we've been able to put together. So to pass that along. I think for the rest of my neighbors that do still have concerns, it's really going to be about continuing the dialogue with Stu and Anna. Once things get up and running and they start down a certain process and we see that there is something that we are not happy about, we're going to have to go to them and work through that. And I think the agreement as it's written gives us that opportunity, and that the ANC is here to help us through that process as well. So I am supportive of it, but I don't live directly across the street. I'm further down. So I think that we have gotten there after quite a long process, and I'm happy with where we are. Thanks.
Well, I'll insert no, it's okay, it's not me, but I will insert myself building off of what you've said. I believe one of the neighbors directly across the street is Selma, right?
Correct.
Yes. Selma and her husband's Bob?
Bill.
Well, I got to be right. But she said they were fine with this agreement. They could live with this agreement. And so I know they live across the street. I also know that the budding neighbor to the rear, Donna, is not okay with this. So I know there's not a unanimous vibe, if I can, but I don't know if we'll even get unanimous on something like this. I know that, man, it seems like a century ago when, I'm trying to think of what Looking Glass Lounge was originally called, Temperance Hall.
Temperance Hall.
I mean, I remember when Temperance Hall opened, and that was a drag-out, knockout fight. And, I mean, all these years later, it's not a problem. So, not to say that this won't have problems. But what I'm saying is sometimes it's impossible to predict if it will have problems or if it won't have problems. But it is kind of a process. Oh, yes, Ms. Smashmouth?
I might say, as
you
I
might.
said earlier, we do have all on-premises licenses up for renewal next year. So you were talking about a second bite at the apple next year. Is your opportunity?
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time?
If you issue a license, the second bite of the apple is next year when you go to renewal. You'll be up for renewal in Tavern in September 2019.
I was, no, it's
Thanks.
Tavern.
I thought it was 2 years out, but it's 1 year out?
Well, it is 2008.
Well, I guess it is 2008. Thank you for reminding me which century I was in.
So again, it's back to process. There will be opportunities for us to continue talking and refine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisette Wong, and I am one of the neighbors that is right across the street. And I'm just like very confused with all the agreements because it's been like several emails, and I have children and I also work, and it's just been very confusing. And I feel like when I come in here, it's like different stories, and there's so many unknowns, and I cannot afford to live with unknowns. I have a child who has a developmental disability. Now, some of my other neighbors don't know, but I also have my 13-year-old who also has a disability, who is no longer in DC, who I had to send to my country because I couldn't deal with everything that was going on with him. So again, I worry about, all of these unknowns, what's gonna happen. I want him to come back, but I can't bring him back because I don't know if this might affect him. He takes antidepressants. What's gonna happen at night if there's like all this noise or like all this commotion that is going on in my neighborhood? And I know, like, I don't wanna be that pushy parent that says, oh, well, everybody needs to, be understanding of my kid who has a disability. But I already have to make so many changes for my, like, within my family. Like, I stopped going to social gatherings, stopped going, doing so many things for my children that I just refuse to, make those changes in my own home. So basically, I'm getting, effed up, right? Like, I'm paying for my mortgage, I'm paying for my taxes. For what, when I can't even, like, have a peace of mind in my own home?
Good evening, Aaron Corbett. I don't love this deal. I don't love that concept. I totally agree with you. I think the story changes more often than it should. I feel the approach taken that they started yesterday going house to house may be a little late. That said, I think this is probably the best deal we're going to get until September 19th. So while I don't love that deal, I fear that the deal we get otherwise may actually be worse and would impact the immediate neighbors even worse. But what you hear from the person, it is not a good deal. So for example, I think you mentioned you want to build a 12-foot wall. For example, putting that just in the settlement itself and saying, look, this will be a wall making the Berlin Wall look puny. Sorry, my German. I think that would be very helpful. So I don't know where that leaves you with your vote or with your. I just want to point out it's not the best deal, but it's not a good deal, but I think it's the best we can get. And specifying the wall, I think, really to make it soundproof would probably be one last thing. 11, version 12, where you can't. That would be. So I introduced the version control thing just because I anticipated a couple versions to come up.
And I complied.
Yes, absolutely. I think it turned out very helpful.
It worked. It did help sort things. At the time when we were at number 2, maybe it seemed like it wasn't a big deal, but now that we've gotten to 11.
They're all in my download box. I can make a little version control.
Well, if it makes you feel better, whenever I start a new version, I save it as a new version before I continue, so I do have them all too.
So I don't know if you can please take all these different points into consideration. I don't know exactly what to do, but
okay. Thank you, Eric.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, neighbors. My name is Gabe. Elizabeth and I live kind of directly across the street, maybe sideways a little bit. I want to thank Commissioner Bass for his efforts, echo the sentiments of my other neighbors. I want to thank Michael, our neighbor, who I think through this process has also been a calm and moderating voice and helped to direct the communication to folks. So I appreciate that, Michael. And I want to take Stu at his word. When we went and sat there a couple weekends ago, he said they want to be our neighbors. So I have neighbors, we're all neighbors. We don't all watch the same TV or drive the same car, but we're all neighbors, we kind of get along. So I would want to be welcome to the street like I was, so I want to welcome you guys, give you a shot. I think some of the comments are appropriate, that we do kind of get a foggy vision of what your vision is. That might just be because your vision is foggy for what it's going to be. But so I want to say that it's a two-way street, so we'll welcome you as neighbors, and please be good neighbors with us.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the community?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Commissioner Holmes. I'm your ANC commissioner. Half y'all don't know me because I walk in the shadows. I've seen some of y'all move in. I've seen a lot of y'all move out. Some got new families going on. I appreciate y'all coming to the neighborhood and making it a little better for everybody. I feel like everybody should have an opportunity, a chance to grow in the city. I shot down the deal before because my conservatives didn't want it. Right now I'm confused. Half y'all want it, half y'all don't. So put me on the draw fence. I'm on the fence. The truth is, this is my last term as the ANC commissioner. I want to go out with good standings with y'all and good understanding with y'all. Basically, I read this, and I'm with some of y'all. I'm a little shaky too on some of the deals. But we went to the meeting, and they said nothing about axes going outside. They said want those little toss things outside. So now it's something different, Kent. I don't know what's up with this. So I'm gonna put it in your ball.
Okay, well, let's do it this way. I'm sure everyone here tonight who's from the community did not speak. If we could just take a straw poll, if that's okay. Of those who live on Morton Street in 701 Lamont, I just wanted to see a quick show of hands. If you're comfortable with it, if you're not, you can move it down. But how many of you are in favor of this? 5 and an iffy. 5 solids. 5 solids. 2 iffy. Yeah. 2 so-so. And how many are really opposed to it? Four and another iffy. Did you? Did you? Okay, those against it up again. Sorry to do it. Those opposed to it one more time, just. I still saw 4 and it's a draw. Yeah. No, I mean, it kind of mirrors what's going on up here.
Can I ask now, since my ANC, can I ask y'all, I want us one thing. Can y'all keep the axe on the inside and toss the bean bags on the outside? Well, they got a choice. Vote against that with alcohol. Well, they want the alcohol, like you got one in the neighborhood.
Well, it would require, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah, absolutely.
Chairman Biggs,
Yeah.
I have to say, I live in the 1-810 single member district. I've spoken with some of my neighbors about this proposal, and they're aware. The neighbors in my SMD are fairly supportive and attend and patronize your establishment. But I'm more kind of amenable to what the abutting neighbors are wanting out of this agreement. So I'll have to yield to my SMD commissioner that's in this, where this establishment is located. So I'll make my vote based on that.
Okay. What I would say is, in my opinion, and I'm not taking away anyone's options to ask questions or offer suggestions. With regards to businesses, I personally feel that a business may have a product, a service, or a model that we don't agree with, but I think that's their business. It's not our business. If I don't feel that drinking and throwing an axe is safe, I personally won't go. I do think our business, and where I've tried to focus, is impact on the community. And the one thing that has continually been the core, I believe, of the conversation around the summer garden has been mitigating noise and mitigating impact, but primarily noise. We know that there's probably going to be parking capacity, right? But capacity is really a noise issue. And so that has been a significant part of the conversation with regards to you're agreeing to change the hours, closing hours to midnight, and you're agreeing to stop organized entertainment, axe tossing, etc. at 9 p.m. It's been trying to get to the point of how do we manage noise. Now, some of you may have some ideas, and I'm happy to hear them. But, and I think to Aaron's point, and perhaps you could speak to this a little bit, Ms. Fatchbaum, the balance I've always struggled with over the years with outdoor licenses, particularly when it's an issue in the community, is where's that sweet spot between where we're actually securing some protections for the community versus what we could get if we went through the protest process out of Abra. Yeah, you can speak to it. Because I know that when King's Deli applied for a full-on liquor license, which they ultimately got, I know we probably could have done a much better job with the settlement agreement than we got out of the Abra board. I know that now, but I can't go back. So,
King's Deli is actually how we met, I believe.
It is how we met. Yeah. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you for that.
It was good for me. So basically,
the corner and watch me testify. It was very encouraging.
Basically, the situation is this: if you don't protest, and the licensee will get the license, right? If you do protest, you can choose to enter into a settlement agreement. You can kind of draft what the community feels comfortable with, what the licensee feels comfortable with, and then your third option is to basically go before the board and have the board make the final determination on what kind of impact the licensee will have on the community. A lot of times people think that it's black and white, either the licensee gets a license or they don't, but I would say probably 90% of the time it falls in that gray zone where the licensee does get the license, but there's some modifications to the license. Now there have been cases where the licensee does not get the license, and there have been cases where the licensee has gotten their license as they applied for it. I kind of make a joke that, I don't know if you have siblings, but it's like going to your father and after a fight with your sibling, you never know what he's going to say. That could be what's going before the board. So you really are kind of risking more than if you settle, but as an agency, we don't take a stance on whether or not you should settle. That's not our business. We don't push it. We don't get involved in that process. We do have a mandatory mediation that's worked into the protest schedule. But again, we as an agency don't recommend licensees enter into settlement agreements, or we don't tell them not to. We're not involved.
Absolutely.
It's a question to you, but it might be a question that other people have. I think Gabe was his name, to Gabe's point, there is part of me that wants to give Stu and Anna a shot. Like, I think we all want that place to be something other than an abandoned grocery store. And so the question to you is, let's say we all say, like, okay, let them do it. Come September 2019, I think it is, it turns out like it feels like a nightmare for the neighborhood. What is the process like, and what are the chances of like revoking, right? Because I think that, to me, that feels like an impossibility. And just from your experience, what is that process like, and how successful, or what you have to do to be successful if it turns out to be not awesome?
Sure. So it's purely circumstantial. It's hard to say that the board will handle one case like another case because every case is totally different. Revocation is not the most common result at a renewal. It's happened in the past, but I wouldn't say it's the most common. It's kind of a similar process. If the protest process is exactly the same, and you're going to explain why this licensee is no longer appropriate for the neighborhood.
But what I would add to issues over the next 12 months. It would be important to, one, try to work it out with business owners, but if that's not working, it is important to call the AGRA hotline and have a trail of documentation. We have had businesses in the past that have been known issues, and when the renewal comes up and people want to protest, I've had Sarah asked her to pull the history of violations or complaints and just find out that there have been none. That makes it very hard, but that's kind of the same with everything, right? We do the same thing with public safety. We'll ask the police for calls for service to an area, which sadly is a FOIA request, but when you get it, it's like everyone knows that there's a direct house and there's a problem, and then it's like that there have been no calls for service. And it's like, well, that's why the police aren't addressing it.
Thank you so much again for plugging our enforcement hotline number. I come to so many community meetings, and one of the first questions I always get is, how come so-and-so is still operating? And we certainly do run at least 2 regulatory inspections a year from us, but we don't always know if someone's not in compliance with their settlement agreement because we might not be out there at the time that they're not in compliance with it, or we rely so heavily on the community to let us know about these things. So please, please, please call. Even if you're not sure whether or not it's a violation, let us tell you that. So
I think it's important to piggyback on that, Sarah, that if somebody calls the hotline, somebody has to come out and investigate.
We take every complaint seriously. Like I said, we have 3 teams of investigators working 7 nights a week. And if you have any questions about how your complaint was handled, you can always reach out to me. I'm the community resource officer, so basically I'm here to help you out.
Commissioner Wade had a question.
Yes, I heard one of the residents say, well, this is the deal we got, it's the best we're going to get. Absolutely, it is not the best we can get. I just want to call your attention to something one of your neighbors said, the thump, yay. And I think she was talking from the sound from within the building. So imagine you're in Wonderland. You know how small that little pad is. And you got a group of people out there throwing axes against a wall, and they go, yay! Yay! Ooh! You're living up the street. You're living down the street. Now, multiply that by 24 because I asked specifically how many axe throwing things were they doing. Imagine that noise day in and day out, and you live there. I don't live there, but I certainly empathize because we had a frat house 2 doors up. They had a party every weekend. Mostly they were inside, but they brought it outside. I could hear that right under my bedroom window. Imagine your residence on Morton, on Lamont, on Sherman even, across Georgia Avenue. You're going to hear that noise. That's not just a little, oh, drinking and talking loud. That's excitement noise. That's competition noise. That's bang, bang, yay, yay, drinking, getting louder and louder noise. People, listen, you don't have to accept that axe throwing outside. Now, I'm not going to fight their garden and business. Don't accept that axe throwing outside. Don't wait a year.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So my question still stands. This is an application for a liquor license. Who in the district licenses people to throw axes outside?
Well, I think
How does it happen?
it's not in public space. I don't think anyone in the District of Columbia licenses people to throw axes. I mean, you can speak to that, perhaps. I mean,
So I would think, based
that
on,
would seem to me, if anything, would be DCRA, if any agency, because they're providing the basic business license.
so I think based on all the emails that have been going back and forth between all of us, Mr. Holmes asked Anna and Stu, and they weren't given a chance to respond. But I don't think any of us have a problem with them doing in their space whatever it is that they want to develop their business to do, as long as it's not providing a nuisance to the outdoor area and the contingent and abutting neighbors. I mean, right? I mean, if you took your straw poll right now and you said, do you have a problem with them doing what they want to do inside their space?
Yeah.
So I don't think any of us have a problem with them getting a liquor license. I don't think any of us really care whether they're throwing axes and drinking beer at the same time, because they have a plan for people to be safe, and we have confidence that they have that plan. It's just the throwing axes plus the beer outside. That's the crux of the matter, I think, for most of us. And so there it is, flat on the table. I think for most of us, if you want a liquor license, well then, don't throw axes outside. Yay or nay? Yeah?
All right, Commissioner Miller, I think you had a question.
No, I was, it sounds like you're on version 11, and I certainly don't want to go to 12, 13, 14, 15
I'll do 14 if I
here
have to.
tonight. And that was a big concern that I had when I was looking at this outdoor, and I think Dottie spoke to it, is the throwing the axe and the huzzah and the noise that would come from that. And so I had actually wondered if it wasn't possible to shut that down even earlier than the outdoor, to allow people to start winding down. But that may not work as a compromise either. So yeah, that had been my suggestion, maybe a couple hours earlier, so 8, 7.
I don't think we care how long we throw axes inside, as long as we can't hear it.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Anna and Stu. Any thoughts or any response?
So I want to, I'm glad we're all having an open dialogue, but a couple of things that I want to make sure that is important to us and has been important to us through the process. Right? We're operating a business, and we're operating a business in an urban environment where there's a lot of constituents, there's a lot of residents, there's a lot of other businesses, and for us, we also, as Kent, when we were talking, we just didn't want to be held to an unfair standard or a different standard than any other business around us. That was one of our primary concerns. Obviously, our concerns were for operating our business and for the concerns of the neighbors that everyone had addressed with us, and trying to meld our business model to still work for us, remain competitive, and also address the concerns of the neighbors. So I want to make sure at that point, as you guys know how we approach the settlement agreement, that's how we were viewing it. I guess 2 things. We have put in a lot of time and effort to figure out if we could do the axe throwing outside to mitigate the noise, and gone through a lot of work to address those concerns. I mean, we're already at probably like over $10,000 in sound engineers and tests and stuff to literally address this concern. So that's to date in terms of expense we've paid to address this specifically. So do I want to get rid of axe throwing outside? No. I think it's a cool component, and I think it's a neat part of our space. I think, as you guys have known throughout this whole process, we've been amenable to trying to figure things out. I would like to be given the opportunity to see it and try it, and if it works and it doesn't do what you guys think it'll do, then I think great. And let's see if we can create a win-win for you guys and for us. If it does, I think we step back and take a look at it, because at the end of the day, as I've committed to you guys from the moment we started talking, I want to be a good, Anna and I both want to be a good community member, and if it sucks for you guys, I don't want to make, we live down the street. We don't want to we wouldn't want that to be us either, so I think if it was loud and it was uncomfortable and we can figure out what that threshold is, or...
In sort of to Stu's point, I think the reason that you see us hesitate over saying, fine, if that's what it takes, is because we both have been working with the engineers and have been looking at different models of other places where we know that there are ways to mitigate the sound so you don't hear the thunk thunk. And we have been spending so much time, effort, and energy researching what those are so that we can stay true to being good community neighbors and be able to truly mitigate that sound with a lot of different components that aren't that 100% are not the targets that we have built today that those who have been in have seen. And so it's important to us to, I almost want to say in some ways, like, give us a chance. Like, we've already been putting a bunch of research in to do this because we care about this and because we know that there are ways that other operators have been able to mitigate the sound of the axis hitting a target by soaking targets and putting in these rubberized units and things of that nature. And we just want the opportunity to be able to try those before saying carte blanche no.
And a couple of things for you guys. Well, hold on, let me just finish addressing this one point. Just so you guys know, Anna and I took two of our manager and our assistant manager. We visited 6 axe throwing venues in Toronto and 2 in New York City on Monday and Tuesday, literally whirlwind tour, and to address this specific thing. So we were looking for specific businesses that were in urban environments. They had outdoor arenas. They were fighting some of the same things we were. We met with the owners. We met with the managers to try to understand what they were doing to mitigate noise and also run their business in a way that was, we went to 2 places in Brooklyn. I mean, if anything's more compact than Brooklyn, they could figure it out, and they did. And so we were able to glean a lot from what we experienced up there, and hoping to bring that back, and obviously shared a lot of that data with our sound engineers to see if we can, again, address it. And I think we can. I really do. And again, like I said, I want to stay true to my word to you guys. If we can, and we don't even need a settlement agreement. You guys don't even need to go to ANC 1A. You can literally come to 3400, knock on the door. She and I are right there, and you can come talk to us and say, this is really not working, and we're going to hear you out. I can't tell you anything other than that. You have us right here, and we're your neighbors.
So my question was, I'm sorry, which I think some of us have proposed as part of the process, is writing something akin to that into the settlement agreement, that like 6 months down the road, if it's untenable for the neighbor to like have, sort of like a formal agreement to have that conversation. Because I'm not saying I don't trust you, but it's
Completely, and Kent, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's already in the settlement agreement.
Well, I don't think there's anything in here that says like a 6-month trial.
No, but I think it says something to the effect of if there are issues with the agreement as it stands from the community reserves the right to come and raise those issues. And
that's standard language for every settlement agreement. That's nothing special.
Sure.
But I still have my question and my concern. So you said you went to Toronto and you also went up to Brooklyn and went outside. What were the sizes of these businesses compared to the size of your business? That's always very important to me. So were they talking about the size of your business? Was it comparable? My whole thing is still back to, I don't care how much noise deadening equipment you use, the crowd, the roar of the crowd every time. I know inside playing darts, it gets really loud. So outside, hitting your targets, it's going to be really loud. You can't contain that noise. It's going to sound like an arena. I can't be any clearer of how it's just going to happen. And then to unring the bell is very difficult then to take a look and see how this business is operating and then come back to the outside action.
And guys, as I mentioned, unringing the bell is coming and talking to us.
Well, let me ask, just from my understanding. So, if you were to get the liquor license tomorrow, you're not built out, you're not at full capacity. When do you imagine the property will be in full swing and fully operational?
Yeah, I want to address in particular one thing about the fence. So we actually, as you guys have seen, commissioners, the drawing we sent around, we're kind of hustling things through with our architect. So once we heard back, they will not allow us to build the fence until the winter of 18. So I think we could probably get started around December is when DCRA and ultimately they would grant the permits for us to build a permanent fence. Lo and behold, of all the things we want to do, the fence is the longest permit and most expensive to get. Why, I have no idea. But that's the case. So the reality is, if permitting goes well, everyone's telling us September 1st we could be open on the inside and actually get the inside done. So let's just call that November 1st probably. So let's say they're right, September 1st. If everything hits perfectly, we could theoretically have the inside done. We would not be allowed to do construction on the outside, we don't think, until, again, the winter time, which would allow us to put up the fence and all the structures that we have proposed doing. So again, why some things might be foggy is during the permitting process and during the planning process, DCRA is telling us what we can and can't do and how things are changing. So we're obviously having to adjust our business model as things go with architects and with the city in terms of our permits. So ideally, if we can, what we would want to do this summer is open really kind of small outside, keep going kind of in a temporary fashion outside as we do the construction on the inside so that we wouldn't have to close down operations. But again, there's plenty of, and one of the things that we did do with the sound engineer was work on a sound mitigation system. The ultimate mitigation system that's going to be installed inside the fence, we can install on the outside of the construction fence, which is kind of cool. So we actually would buy all those products early, install them, and then they actually get slipped inside of the wood veneer when the main fence gets put up. So that's ideally, from a timeline perspective, what we're looking at in terms of time. So again, September 1 on the inside being fully done, so they would do all that work over the course of the summer, and then the inside would get constructed once they finished the inside, and then ideally fully open as a whole unit, inside and outside, full construction done, March 2019. Michael, you had a question?
You answered it, was whether or not you would have activities outside to protest guests, and your hope is that this temporary fence with a boost block will be enough to contain.
Well, more than that. I think there's a lot of stuff that we learned when we were in Toronto by seeing just different setups that are totally engineered a lot differently than we had ever thought, that really, certainly from the axe perspective, change the dynamic of this sound. So we know that works. I mean, we specifically saw it ourselves and went and checked it out. Very different. And that's a lot of stuff that we want to bring into the equation as we get going. So.
Well, I'll be honest, based on everything I've heard, especially with the temporary, some of the things we discussed were the permanent fence. I think you said 12 feet and the acoustic block. And that's the best case scenario. Would you be planning to have an outdoor gallery arena with a temporary fence?
If we could, yeah, we'd like to.
Because
and again, the fence that's up today is 10 foot.
8 foot.
8 foot, excuse me. And the goal with that is to scrim it so that it doesn't look like a construction fence, and put up the acoustic block so that it does what it's supposed to do, which is block sound. And we'd also position the arenas and change the construction of the arenas so that they were not loud.
Well, I don't know. I'm as some have said, I'm of the mind where I'd love to give you a chance. I really do. In a perfect world, which is not what we have, and I know other businesses have done it this way, where they take 2 bites of the apple, the first one being the inside, and the second one being the sidewalk cafe or the summer garden. And I say that because I think what would have been very helpful is being able to have an outdoor gallery set up with the temporary fence, just so that we could experience it, we could see what it's doing, we could see if there's some locations that are.
The axe throwing arena would happen on Georgia Avenue. It would not happen in the back facing Morton. In fact, they told us, the sound engineer said, make sure everything is going towards the building so that the acoustablock actually catches any reverberating sound, which is what it's designed to do. That's one. Two, we're certainly amenable to making sure that, as we talked, that at 9 o'clock there's no amplified sound, there's no live entertainment being axe throwing, so that you're not having the shouts, the thuds, whatever noises people think are going to be occurring. You know, we made that, I don't even want to say a concession, but you know, we obviously want to be considerate of you guys and considerate of the time of day and be considerate of noise pollution into a residential area. So we're certainly willing to make sure that if there's issues, we can address it and we can adjust our business plan to accommodate our neighbors. And again, if we do it, it doesn't work, and everyone says, guys, this is a huge pain in the ass for me and my family, you know, we'll adjust. We'll make it work again, because at the end of the day, we want to open and we want to be a good part of the community, and if it doesn't work, we'll obviously certainly be very receptive to that.
Okay, Commissioner Holmes, we need to get going because Commissioner Holmes is running short on time. And, yeah.
So I just have like a quick comment. So I keep on hearing this that you want to be part of the community. And then I hear that you've done all this research, but how is it that I don't know when I live right across the street? I don't know how all this, I get it, right? You're trying to find business. I get all that, but you also have to kind of like, put yourself on my shoes. My home is my investment. If this doesn't work out, then what do I do? If, I would have appreciated if you would have given us more of that information, because every time we come here, it's like more information.
Respectfully, we invited you guys over to our business to do Q&A and have coffee with us and talk to us. We've knocked on your door personally twice to reach out, answer questions, be able to have a dialogue, whatever that dialogue may be, and be supportive. And we're here to do that today. And if you want to come over tomorrow and talk about what we've learned and what we intend to do, we're ready to do that tomorrow, a week from now, whenever you want to talk. We're here.
And, you did came to my door, and that happened last night as I was having dinner with my kids. But again, I feel like you kind of have to come to me because you're coming to my community,
Respectfully, this is the one point that I just want to reiterate. It's our community. It is not just your community. I live 4 blocks away. I care about the community. Stu lives 8 blocks away, so just respectfully, I just want to say that I don't want to make this contentious.
I'm going to stop it there. Commissioner Holmes, do you have a direction you'd like to go with this, or a suggestion?
Some I ain't gonna like my suggestion.
Okay.
I know that. I lived on the edge all my life, so I'll be 64 this June, so I'm gonna make this decision for all of us. Let's all put the peas in the pot and say let's get along with it, go along with the program, but let's try, let's give it a chance. Everybody else needs a chance, these ones. I ain't saying it's a perfect world. I'm not perfect for sure. But I figure everybody needs a chance. Some of y'all don't like it, but we can go back to the drawing board when they renew their license. And I know y'all gonna make phone calls when y'all see something, so work them phones, work them fingers. So all be happy neighbors, okay? Because I ain't going nowhere. Actually, my mother moved up in 1972. She been here since then. I got the military in 78, and I've been up here since then. I raised 3 daughters in this neighborhood. I ain't trying to go nowhere. Matter of fact, I might die up here on Georgia Avenue. Who knows? So I figure let's go ahead and give them a shot. See what it's going to do.
Okay, so is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I motion that we vote on it.
All right. Is there a second? There we go. Moving a second. All right. All those in favor? because when you go, we lose quorum. So I want to at least get, two things done very quickly. Commissioner Miller, I know you have two things that have to get done tonight.
Yes.
So if you could do that quickly.
Real quick, since we're about to lose quorum, and I know we were actually just having a conversation, we do have people who have children that are waiting on their grants. When we lose quorum, should we?
If you can make it quick like a bunny. There's the iFly and the blue bars. 9 and 10.
Okay, I fly you. It's with a real heavy heart that I have to tell you guys that we got a letter today from the Advisory Neighborhood Commission Executive Director, who has told us that we cannot fund any part of the iFly grant. It says 1A grants may only be used for people who live and work in the ANC 1A area, and that this grant includes youth from beyond our borders. But even if they were all from 1A, the number who would benefit falls far short of a sufficient number. It also says, accordingly, while some things aren't necessarily the plane tickets, we can't fund anything travel outside of the Beltway, Washington Metropolitan Beltway. So we can't support it. What I can do is to encourage everyone in this audience to support this effort to train young women and to expose them to travel overseas and to expose them to different cultures. This organization could absolutely use your support. They're looking to find funding for, let me give you the exact numbers. In case any of you guys, I'm sorry to see that Crack and Axon left so quick. They're still here? Oh, perhaps you guys can, you moved. Oh, okay. Perhaps you guys can help them. They're looking for about $2,500 for student plane tickets, air transportation to and from the airport, travel insurance, T-shirts. They're going to Costa Rica, CPR training and first aid kits. We really wanted to help them. So if there's any way any of you can make a contribution to this worthy cause, either through your business or through your personal funds, which I'm going to give you some money tonight, at least pay for your some first aid kits or something. But we can't do anything to help you. We had great hopes. We did write to the ANC Commission Executive Director, and we just got this response back tonight. Previously, we could have helped you, but they changed the rules recently. The ANC law changed, and so it hinders what we can actually do. So sorry.
So what about the other one quickly? Blue bars? Okay.
Yes, so Blue Bars, we have Mr. Chambers here who would like to speak a little bit to the grant request. And we have that in front of you all, that's tab 10. Mr. Chambers?
Greetings, everyone, commissioners, audience, thank you. Yes, I wanted to first just say that I am here with my child, but she's also my deputy, and she's a little worried about the axes and the alcohol, just FYI. She's also concerned about the Jenga that landed on Columbia Heights, too. She's worried mostly about the plywood absorbing water. I don't know how it's going to work. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassing her. Also, this is off track with Bloom Bars, but just dealing with talking about this business and hearing more about it for the first time. I'm sorry I haven't been as engaged with it in person, but I definitely can hear and some of the concerns resonating on both sides. One of the things that kind of struck me as I listen to this, our community, like this is our community, it's my community. I think what's missing a little bit is some of the power dynamics that are at play here, and thinking about who is going to be, actually, Stu and Anna, I don't know, sorry, I don't know, I wanted you to hear this. But just thinking about who actually is going to be using your business as part of the community, and will everybody in that community have access based on their socioeconomics. To offer a suggestion that maybe to engage more in the community and the business itself is to have some type of, I don't know, regular community day where they are able to actually afford and come in and be a part of that, or offer discounts to them, because I know a lot of these businesses can be very expensive and too expensive. But I think just breaking down that our community, because there's our people who can say it's been our community, and I understand it's different now, and people who live here, this is our community, everybody who lives here, but historically, there are people who feel very marginalized and feel like their livelihoods and their way of life is under attack. And I think it's important to recognize that, and not understanding that, you know, we all have to live here, and some of us make a living. That's all I had to say. Sorry to take that much time. Just wanted to raise that. We are at Bloom Bars, as you know, nonprofit community organization, all ages, all the time, no alcohol, fully donation-based, volunteer-run, and love-fueled. We have programs every day for kids, for toddlers, for after-school kids and adults. We never turn anyone away at the door. It's about building community through the arts, and recognizing all the differences and trying to have conversations about them. So all that to say, summer months can be very hard for Bloom Bars because people go outside and it's beautiful out. And as we launch new programming and try to be financially sustainable, advertising is a big part of that. And fortunately, we don't have an advertising budget. We did just win for the 7th year in a row Best Arts and Culture Nonprofit in the Washington City Paper Readers Poll. Yes, we're very happy about that. That's basically our average advertising budget. So what we're asking for is just $500 to do some advertising on social media, update our brochures, and do some flyers with our new programming for kids and families, and hopefully we will support that. Thank you for all your support in the past.
Thank you. Commissioner Wade, is there anything there we can support?
Yes, we can support the whole budget of $500 because they're asking for social media page, flyers and brochures, which would benefit the community and passed out among our community. Do you guys have your distribution system set up?
Yes, we distribute to all local businesses, libraries, park bulletin boards. We also come and distribute to elementary schools, parent group listservs, at our business itself, at festivals, Columbia Heights Day, etc.
Okay. All right. Well, it's going to be our recommendation to approve this grant request for $500.
I actually have one quick question.
Please.
Social media, your Facebook, and your Instagram, when you're saying 250, is that boosting your posts?
Yeah, that's just promoting. Yeah, exactly.
So,
it's just
it's
a.
not your own personal website.
No, yeah. If you go to like our Instagram, You Bloom, We Bloom. There's actually a really good example. Last week we did an art rental that was supported by the DC Arts and Humanities Commission. And there was $500 for advertising for the art rental. So you'll see a lot of the art rental posts promoted on our Facebook page, Bloom Bars, and our Facebook group, Bloom Bars. And that's how we got the word out about that. That happened this past Sunday.
One real quick question.
Sure.
The programming that you're offering is all donation-based.
Yes.
Everything that you've done is you can pay $5, you can pay $10.
Exactly. Most of it is between 5 and 15. You know, we suggest a donation. Most people give it, but you know, some people give more. But we never turn anybody away.
Oh, and to my conversation at the beginning of the evening, I really appreciate that. And for summer months, that's when our kids are really wondering what to do, and it can be expensive. So thank you.
Thank you. So is there a
Absolutely.
motion?
Thank you.
Was there a motion? You made it, and okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Commissioner Miller, can you go into the IHOP?
Thank you.
I need you for
Let
this
me
one.
try to get through this as quickly as possible. So I'm introducing a resolution in opposition to Bill 220759. This proposed legislation will give a tax abatement to DC USA, the benefit of which will be passed on to its tenant, one specific tenant only, which is the International House of Pancakes, in the form of a rent subsidy. So the primary concern has been the fairness of extending almost $500,000 in relief to one business, especially given that during the Office of the Chief Financial Officer's recent report, which is required to have any tax exemption, they demonstrated that IHOP has a history of profitable operations, and it was their recommendation that the 9-year real property tax abatement that was proposed in this specific bill is not necessary for DC Pancakes LLC IHOP. This was brought to me, this was a concern that's been expressed amongst residents. It's also been a concern expressed by neighboring businesses that also provide sit-down, affordable meals, serve as gathering places for our communities, and they're also really suffering from the same challenges of an increasingly expensive city with rising tax burdens. So while I certainly will support any effort that advances a comprehensive and equitable plan to mitigate these challenges for all of our businesses, I don't want to see this done as a one-off. Tax subsidies can certainly be a useful tool in addressing challenges, but they're questionable if they don't fall within a broader policy construct directing their use. And this particular bill fails to achieve any sort of wider objectives because it sets up a financial benefit for one tenant only and then ignores the welfare of surrounding businesses. So it becomes a sort of first come, first served scenario, providing preferential business without contributing to sort of the overall economic development priorities for our community. Beyond the inequitable support, I have concerns with ability to monitor and enforce. I'm concerned that this particular bill has no caps on the abatement. So when the office provides its analysis, it's looking at a snapshot at one point in time. It's not, it's rather conservative, and I think over the course of 9 years, we've all seen how property values rise, and again, without a cap, that number can go well beyond the $500,000 in the original estimate. This bill also attaches it to the business and not the space, so, we're sort of creating a situation where we're, subsidizing a business which, again, 9 years from now may or may not be the best business for local residents or for the overall health of our community. So I'm very concerned about the ad hoc abatement approach being presented in this bill. There are very long-term implications for the district's budgeting and financing planning. Approving a property tax abatement for a company whose need has been questioned and by the Office of Chief, the OSCFO has said that there is no need. It deprives our city of revenue that in the future could be allocated to support our schools, affordable housing, and many of the other initiatives that our residents are asking for to support our broader community. So that's one, but there are many other issues. That's quick and dirty.
Yes.
Yes, I have a number of comments as well. I just wanted to know if there was any representatives from the city, from council members Nadeau's office, from the chief financial office, or anybody who can address any of these issues before I raise my questions.
Thank you all for having us, and Commissioner Miller, good to see you. I appreciate your comments. This is something that we did not take lightly in putting forth a tax abatement.
Who are you and what office are you from?
Sorry, my name is Ben Davis. I'm from Councilmember Nadeau's office. I'm here today with Tioka Jackson, who is one of the owners of the IHOP in Columbia Heights. So as I was saying, this is not something we took very lightly. This is something we did do analysis and did our due diligence on. I want to first address one of the comments that Commissioner Miller made, which was that the TAFA, that's the tax analysis that was done by the OCFO's office, it did find that the Columbia Heights IHOP has been profitable for the last 3 years. That's based on analysis of their books, and that's a good thing. I think we agree. We're happy they're doing well in the neighborhood. But one thing that's important to note is that this establishment is connected directly with another IHOP that's based in Ward 8 that has also been around for about 10 years now. And the Ward 8 establishment is providing food, healthy sit-down food in a neighborhood that's underserved, and they're one of the first food establishments there. And I don't want to go into great detail about that because Mr. Jackson can speak to that better than I can. But what's important to note is that there was an actual follow-up analysis that was done. And I want to point out that the Ward 8 IHOP has been unprofitable for a number of years now, and they're keeping it open to serve that community. And the question was asked by Councilmember Evans to the OCFO's office, can you do a new analysis that looks at both IHOPs together? That analysis was done, and it looked at the last 3 years of the books, and it said that had they not received any abatements over the past 3 years, that there would have been a net loss of approximately $180,000. So looking at them collectively, there actually is a loss and there is a need. And because we, in the council's office and in DC Council, have a concern for the entire community, that is a serious concern that we consider. Now, I want to add a couple other things about the bill that was introduced. We didn't just introduce an abatement without any consideration of how it would impact the community. One of the aspects of the abatement that we built into it was that there would be a requirement that the hiring practices be largely DC based. So there's a 51%, there's a requirement that 51% of the employees at the IHOP are DC residents, and of that 51%, 30% have to be Ward 1 residents. That's actually a practice they have been fulfilling for the past many years, or again, Mr. Jackson can speak to maybe since the beginning. They have been a good neighbor, they have employed locally, and that's something that, again, that was very important to our office to ensure. So I can keep going on some of the, and I guess one other thing I wanted to address before I hand it over to Mr. Jackson. Commissioner Miller, you also mentioned that you were concerned about the oversight of this issue. Well, again, built into this bill is an annual reporting requirement of their employment practices, and in terms of ensuring that the abatement is still being passed on to the owners of the IHOP, and that the IHOP is still being used as a restaurant in this community. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Mr. Jackson, and I'll be here to answer additional questions as well.
Piggyback on that real quick.
Just remember, you need to be brief.
So when I mentioned monitoring and evaluation, I did talk to somebody in the chief financial officer office who said that at the end of the day, the Office of Tax and Revenue does not have systems in place to ensure compliance with the hiring requirements. So while I understand, and I certainly hope that if DCUSA is getting this tax abatement, that you will make sure it gets trickled down to you. Great Properties hasn't done the best job at fulfilling its obligations in the past, so I'm trusting that you will make sure that they are compliant this time. But as far as the work requirement, there's no FTE, there's no individual who's specifically tasked to make sure that as we're giving away millions and millions of dollars in tax abatements, that these employees that are required are actually that the restaurants and that the businesses and that the hotels
sorry to interrupt, that's actually incorrect. There will be a report to OTR because OTR is not set up to do this oversight. The mayor's office will be responsible. I just wanted to clarify that.
I just wanted to get that concept out.
And moving on, Mr. Jackson, can we hear from you?
I'd like to just respond to one other point from Commissioner Miller, if I may take your indulgence for that.
Just keep in mind, any time we could lose quorum.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to go down that road. I'd like to have you all have an opportunity to vote on this. You did mention DC USA as, or I should specifically say Grid Properties as, to be perfectly honest, a bad actor in this area. We made a deal with them over 10 years ago. They, as far as we're concerned, have not been the neighbors that we hoped they would be. They have not really filled in their side of the story of filling there's been a lot of vacancies. They've not found a lot of local and minority-owned businesses. We also see that after this 10-year period where they've gotten a large amount of tax abatements and other tax incentives, a lot of people are leaving. This IHOP wants to stay. They are minority-owned. They've been here for 8 years now. They've been an important part of the community, and not just this community, but the entire district community. And I think it's really important to recognize that they're trying to stay committed to this neighborhood and to this ward and to the district as a whole. So I appreciate you bringing up Grid Properties on that.
But now I need to ask you a question.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah, you're saying Grid Properties has not been a good actor. You're saying that businesses have not been able to stay because it hasn't been affordable enough. I know for a fact that Staples was in the black. It wasn't the most profitable store, but I deeply miss it. So my question to you is pretty direct. What have you done? What has your office done in the last 3.5 years to make them good actors and to hold them accountable? What have you done for the other small businesses that are in there and want to stay?
Commissioner, I appreciate that question. And there are a lot of tools that are available to make sure that our business districts are thriving, and one of those tools is an abatement. There are other tools like Great Streets, for example, which applies to Georgia Avenue, for example.
Don't even go into Great Streets.
Well,
Great Streets isn't going to happen with Grid Properties, and you know it.
I mean,
if they're a bad actor, and they're a bad actor that has been supposed to be delivering for the last 10 years, and we haven't had oversight for the last 3.5, you can't expect Main Streets to solve this problem.
So
this
Commissioner
is your wheelhouse.
Okay, and Commissioner, I'll respond if you give me the opportunity to. I think the important point is that this deal was made well before our time. It is a deal that...
I don't buy that either. It's yours now.
I know, and I understand that, but there are legal limitations on what we can do to someone who is essentially abiding by the rules of what was a bad deal that was made. So I hear your point, and more needs to be done, and we are working on that, and we are continuing to develop strategies to address it. And there, like I said, there are many tools available to that. You might be right, Great Streets isn't going to do it on its own, and we do need to continue to work on this issue. So I appreciate your passion on this, and we want to work with you, because this does affect all of us in the ward, because this is kind of a meeting grounds for the entire Ward 1 community, not just ANC 1A. But I don't think attacking me right here and saying that I'm not doing anything for the past 3 years and that now I'm just stepping up to do something now is really a productive conversation for us to have.
Mr. Chairman, it's not you personally,
Well,
it's the office you represent.
Then I'll say the office I represent, I do not believe it is a productive conversation for us today to get into pointing fingers between us or our offices about what we have done. I'm trying to speak about a specific business, and I would like to, yield the floor to Mr. Jackson so you actually get to know the man and the business that is trying to thrive in this neighborhood and is committed. I also think there's another question that I'd be happy to answer, or Mr. Jackson can maybe answer as well.
I would absolutely love to hear from Mr. Jackson, and I just wanted to bring us back to the IHOP for a moment, and I know we're also all very pressed for time right now. I share Commissioner Miller's concerns about some of the overarching issues and dynamics at play, and I think it's extremely important that we look out for other small businesses that might benefit from a similar situation. I do want to say that my constituents
So, I really did have questions, and I did call Councilmember Nadeau's office so I could be a little clearer on this. I happen to be probably the sole person in this room other than Linwood Johnson who worked our buns off trying to get this DCUSA built in the first place. Oh yeah, Patrick, I'm so sorry. I was speaking commissioner-wise. You always community. Always community strong. But so we really worked hard to get this deal. We turned a blighted neighborhood that no one wanted to come into, that neighborhoods did not want to be associated with, into one of the most dynamic neighborhoods in the whole metropolitan area. Thank you, Ward 1, ANC 1A. I mean, it was not easy. These young men and their father stepped up when nobody else wanted to rent that space. And as you know, space has gone unrented all along in that place. For them to take the risk, to put their careers and their lives and their fortunes online, to come in here and help make this a viable community, I'm still very appreciative of it. And for the businesses that were forced out because DCUSA has not done what it's supposed to do, has not lived up to the potential that it still has, I am sorry we lost them. We lost them not because of their bad practices, or maybe because of their bad practices. I don't know. But I don't think we should risk losing a viable minority-owned franchise in our community over $50,000 a year. Now, it sounds like a lot, and it sounds like a little, but let's just be real. When you're talking about 51% of the jobs going toward Washington, D.C. residents that are employed with this business, and 30% going toward one residence, ensuring benefits, ensuring a livelihood, ensuring taxes being paid, helping with property taxes. I think that $50,000 is a great investment. That abatement is minor compared to the benefits to the community. Not to mention the fact that I like to go in and sit down and have somewhere clean and decent to eat too that I can afford. And I know the food is fresh, and I know the food is good. And I know that people like me live in the area, work in the area, and eat in the area. It's a good meeting place. So personally, I think we should keep that abatement, and I think we should work harder, not punish businesses that are doing well and making it harder for them to continue to do well. But I think we should be working harder to make sure that the minority businesses and the thriving businesses are not driven out by the higher and ever-increasing rents. It's happening over at the Tivoli. And then we have neighbors who don't want certain businesses and they drive away potential businesses. So we have a whole lot of things going on. I think the investment, $50,000 a year in a tax abatement, and how much did we give Clark? How much did we give Donatelli? How much did we do Davis Construction? I mean, when we talk abatements, we're talking multi-million dollars. We're talking $50,000 minimum a year or around that a year for businesses providing over 50 jobs to this community every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I think we need to prioritize what is important. And what we need to hear today is a little understanding that it's not all about every dime has to go to fixing a pothole. Sometimes a family will need a leg up of a job, and that abatement and that company still being within this area may just save a family. I don't know. But I think that it's, I'm opposed to this opposition. I think we should support that bill that allows for an abatement. I think we should work harder to make sure that we have other opportunities for the businesses that are experiencing difficulty up here in prosperous, dynamic, diversified Columbia Heights.
Thank you, Chairman Bass. Thank you, Commission and members of our community for allowing me to speak. I thought it would be appropriate that I would come up and sort of give you a profile of who we are and what we do. So my name is Tyoka Jackson. I'm here on behalf of my dad, brother, and I as the owners of the IHOP at 3100 14th Street Northwest in Columbia Heights. We are the first franchisees in IHOP ever in Washington, D.C. And we opened the first one in Ward 8, like Ben talked about, 10 years ago, and we followed up with Columbia Heights 8 years ago. When we decided we wanted to bring IHOP to D.C., we targeted specific areas. We could have taken it to near the zoo in Willey Park. We could have taken it to the Georgetown area, but we wanted to target priority development zones. We wanted to send a message to the community and to others that you can do business in areas that have been designated a certain way and still make it happen. And so that's why we picked where we picked for these two locations. We worked with initially, well, let me just say this. Everyone knows IHOP is a multinational conglomerate. It's owned by a big company called Dine Brands. They own Applebee's and all that. But they're not really in the pancake business. Each franchise is owned by individual operators. And we are a dad and his two sons who own and operate two IHOPs. And that's what we do. I was born in D.C., my dad was born in D.C., my brother was born in D.C. My dad grew up as a product of D.C. public schools. He was a D.C. city employee with the D.C. Public Library for 30 years. He retired as a D.C. National Guardsman for 30 years right over there at the D.C. Army. My brother is a D.C. resident. He was a D.C. police officer for 30 years. We're D.C. This is who we are. And we reached out to the Columbia Heights Economic Development Corporation, that was run by the late Bob Moore, who helped us put together a really big employment drive at the community center on 14th and Girard. We did a job fair there where my dad, brother, and I, we sat there and did interviews ourselves for 6+ hours, getting to know our community and hiring within. That was really important to us from day one. This is what we've been doing in both wards. And so we were able to hire former TANF employees. We still have former TANF recipients. We have single moms, single dads. We have vets. We have one gentleman who spoke in front of the council, the Finance and Revenue Committee last week. His name is Derek Bixby. He is a former incarcerated gentleman for multiple decades. And he talked about how the IHOP job has turned his life around and allowed him to support his kids. And so this is the effort that we've been making. We just recently completed a LGBTQ sensitivity and awareness training for both of our stores because we find it is very important to do that and make sure that our people are ready to serve all of our community. We feel like we have the most diverse staff that you could possibly have for every gender, orientation, and racial background, because this is what is reflected in our restaurant in Ward 1, Columbia Heights. And so briefly, just to piggyback on Commissioner Miller's discussion about the teachers, and it's being, we're supporting our teachers and teacher, what's the name of the week we're in? Teacher appreciation. All right, so we have one of our neighbors, which is Bell Middle School.
High school.
High school, I'm sorry, high school.
They keep changing.
Yes. The school right next to us. All right, so we've worked with them over the years. We've fed our teachers for free dozens of meals over the years for our teachers. We participated in a literacy program for the young students. They had to read 5 books and if they, from cover to cover, and if they did that, they were able to get a bookmark, and that bookmark doubled as a coupon that they would come in and get a free meal and a dessert. So I'm saying all this to say that we feel like we've had a positive impact on our community, and we want to continue to do that. Grid Properties is some developer from New York. We're DC, and we're here, and we need help from a global standpoint. That Southeast IHOP can't exist without the Ward 1 IHOP. I know that's not your area, but we're talking about DC. And we're talking about residents in an area that Washington Post a couple years ago said had the highest unemployment in America. And so, again, we targeted these two areas because they were priority development zones, and we're here and existing, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're asking for you guys to support the bill put forth by Councilmember Nadeau.
Okay, how do we move this to?
Just one last comment, if I may. You all know that my predecessor, Ms. Jackie, would support the IHOP wholeheartedly. So, Ms. Jackie would support the IHOP, so I just want to raise that.
I just want to say, look, I take my kids to IHOP for every birthday. We've given them, we have other hamburger, we have other pancake places. I give them other options. They love the IHOP. This is not
And I love your kids.
Thank you. This is not a reflection on your business, your role in our community. What I'm opposing specifically is the scope of this particular legislation. I think that limiting it to one business when we have many businesses in our community that serve a very similar role. They are local, they hire locally. One of our, in fact, Latina lives blocks away from her business. So what I would love to see is an expansion and a revisiting of this bill to take into consideration a broader economic scope, because at the end of the day, tax abatements should not be one-offs, they shouldn't be, band-aids, they should be part of a larger policy that I would love to see initiated, having you include.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think you've made that point. We need to move this to a vote. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak to this specifically? If you could be succinct, that would be lovely.
As he walks up, let me just say that there's a real estate tax exemption on the books in the city for new restaurants and for supermarkets. We were moving towards this with a former council member, and before, he did not, was not reelected, but we were moving towards this and just didn't happen. But I just want the commission to understand, this was something that was in the works years ago, and we got it in Southeast, and we were on our way to getting it here, and all new restaurants and supermarkets that in priority development zones can apply and get this exact abatement because it's on the books already.
First of all, let me echo some of the previous statements. This has nothing to do with IHOP. I wish you continued success. It sounds as though your Columbia Heights store is successful, and I wish you better luck on the Ward 8 store as well. This is solely about, as Commissioner Miller said, the scope of this legislation. I think it's an issue of fairness. I mean, what we're creating here, regardless of the tenuous connection, emotional connection between two stores at opposite ends of the city, what we're creating here is some de facto system of patronage. I don't like it. It's this typical thing that we do where we apply Band-Aids and we give benefits and relief, sometimes to deserving businesses, but for the wrong reasons. This has to be part of a broader policy approach that rewards businesses who are good actors like you, that rewards businesses that make it an initiative and make it a priority to hire district residents and hire neighborhood residents, that do well by the community and that become those community focal points that your store has become, that has become an example of in this community. So this has nothing to do with IHOP. I go there, I take my kids there, we have a blast. And this has more to do with the fact that why aren't we supporting all our ward businesses the way Councilmember Nadeau is proposing that we support you, regardless of the sort of cross-city implications of it. If there are other businesses like this, regardless of whether they're in the DC, USA or not, who, by the way, are basically negotiate at the end of the bayonet point of an attorney. I mean, you talk about trying to enforce something with grid properties, you have to be surgical about it because you'll probably spend more in attorney's fees trying to enforce it than you will the amount of the benefit. So it's about applying this in a fair manner and giving support to all businesses that are creating the types of environment and are forwarding our economic objectives as a city as a whole that can hopefully in the future follow your example. That's all I
One comment I just wanted to read off. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Jackson.
I was doing a little research before this event tonight and actually came across a interview with you on Fox Business News. And there was a quote from you saying, you know, in the private sector, we have to produce every day. It goes to our bottom line. We're dealing with our own money. It appears to me that we've got a bunch of people here in DC playing high stakes poker with other people's money, and that's a little scary to me. That gets to the fairness of the tax abatement that's been talked about before, and I'm concerned about the equity for other businesses. I've just had 3 businesses in my development just shut down. I'm wondering if they would have stayed if they had the same abatement given to them by a council member that you're being given now.
Well, first I would say I was having a discussion about federal government and federal dollars. That was one, but to speak to this situation specifically, you got to remember this is legislation that was on the books before we even became an IHOP. So they were trying, they being the then council members were trying to drive new businesses, specifically restaurants and grocery stores, to areas that needed them. And so we fit that profile, and here we are applying for it. Now, obviously, you know, we feel like we have some uniqueness in terms of our background and, you know, us being local, but I just want to make it clear, this is something that is in the law right now. It was written as a specific bill, but you can go and find the new restaurant tax, new restaurant and grocery store tax exemption on the books right now. It's already there, targeting what we did. We specifically picked 2 priority development areas for this very reason, in part to help to get that help from the tax abatement, and also to send a message to the city and to hire an area that needed it. And that's kind of why we're here.
And that's the point I was just trying to reiterate as one of the people who worked trying to get these businesses here. We did make promises to them. And DC USA did not keep up half what they were supposed to be doing. You know, we're going through that right now. We're finding replacement pavers. Something so minor as replacement pavers that they were supposed to maintain a 30% supply of. So we have replacement pavers at all times. I mean, you good bubble, don't have a clue what that man did for this community. Every business up there, every apartment, you where you live now, you can thank Bob Morgan because it wasn't there. It wasn't even an idea. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox because I know you gotta go. This is just so important that we just don't always look at dollars and cents. And that report from the CFO office did not sit right with me. And they didn't compute it right. And I'm surprised they didn't come here tonight and straighten that out because I asked them to.
May I say, Ms. Ludwig, that report simply looks at numbers.
Yeah.
And numbers don't tell the story. Numbers don't tell the story why this exemption was created in the first place. It was created to attack a certain problem. That report does not attack any problem. It doesn't talk about those sort of things. It just looks at numbers. And so to be fair, the numbers are what they are, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And to your point, DC Grid Properties had a deal, and they built it, and they got paid. And they sold Target and became cash flow positive just from selling the Target space. And they took their tax credits back to New York. God bless them. God bless America. But there's a second part to the deal, and that's the tenants. And there was this real estate tax exemption created for the tenants. They sold, like you said, they came after me because they needed to fulfill an obligation to the city to bring in people of color who were small and local. And they sought me, and I came, and there was this tax exemption on the books. And I'm just simply submitting the paperwork for the exemption.
Okay. Patrick, can you keep it to about a minute?
I will try and be brief, but I just want to back up some of what Dottie just said. I was on the board of DCCH when we solicited this gentleman to come into this property. I worked in numerous hours trying to get the DC USA property where it is today. And we did have a whole lot of problems with Grid, trying to get them to do the financing. We had to get the DC City Council to agree under Jim Graham's leadership to put a parking lot in that and pay for it out of city funding. And part of the deal that was negotiated with Grid was they were going to allot a certain amount of square footage in that building for minority-owned businesses to come in. And we went out and beat the streets to get people to come in and couldn't. And this group was the only one that stepped up and said, we will take the lead and the gamble, because back then they didn't even know what was going to work, to come into this property and do it. And Grid agreed to give them this contract, and whether if they negated on it, I understand what you're saying, Kent, but that ownership started with Jim Graham, and the follow-through may not have been connected with Brianne, but it's not, it's a city, as Dottie said, issue. And the other piece of it is that from the standpoint of my personal standpoint of where Ms. Miller is coming from, where the council person failed, in my perspective, in advocating for this, is she should have gone to the Ward 8 council person and said, I need you to co-sign this and support this because of the logic that is needed to make it work. She did it on her own, and boo-hoo to her, she didn't do it well. But that still doesn't mean that we should rake this poor guy over the coal for something that he has stepped out, and the business is doing fine. We shouldn't be negative to them just because somebody else didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I'll just quickly note that I'm happy to take the blame for that, but we did work closely with Councilmember Trayon White's office. We actually drafted the bills in together, so the fact they weren't signed, we didn't sign each other, was merely just a decision that was made collectively. But I do take your point. Maybe it was still a strategic misstep, but we worked hand in hand with Mr. Jackson and Councilmember White's office, which Mr. Jackson can probably attest to as well. We had to sit down all together. So.
Well, let me ask this. Speaking of things that could have been better, when did you reach out to Commissioner Miller and let you know you were working on this so that she would be fully informed about what the intent was and have the opportunity to ask these questions perhaps months ago versus now?
So I appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner, and I'll confess all of my sins tonight. It's my understanding that in the history of the bills that we've introduced, that generally ANCs, either through the grapevine or I'm honestly too green to say exactly how it gets passed on, that generally they are notified. Obviously that did not happen in this case till I believe Thursday or Friday night before the hearing, and I do apologize for that misstep. We are clarifying our policy so that we will be proactive to give that information in the future. But I will say that I believe the opportunity to comment was communicated to Commissioner Miller, and please correct me if I'm wrong, on that. What's that?
You're mistaken, that it was not communicated to me.
Okay, well, I was informed by Councilmember Evans' office that.
Because I found out the evening before the testimony was due, I had not seen the tax abatement. And so I had contacted her office asking if I could submit testimony after the actual hearing. So I was not notified, certainly with any reasonable expectation to be able to prepare something thoughtful, because I certainly wanted to make sure that it was again, it's not against the business, but it's more against the concept and the delivery of this particular bill. So, no, I was not notified. There was no communication. I do know that other people had been communicated and much through the rumor mill.
All I'll say to that is that my understanding, and I have email record of this, is that on Friday you were aware of the hearing on Monday, which, again, I'm not trying to argue that that was enough time as you should have, but you did have the weekend to prepare, plus additional days after the hearing.
I had to let them know by 10 o'clock Friday morning if I could attend the hearing.
That's not how it works. Anyone's allowed
That's what
to.
the hearing petition says. But you know what?
Well, it's a public hearing. You're allowed to.
I'm tired of this. Okay? We're
We're gonna vote on this thing.
We want to move it forward. I actually moved, unless there's any more discussion.
No more discussion.
I would like to move.
When is the park take action? When is the hearing?
So, and Zach actually was the one who called me Thursday evening to let me know that the hearing notice. So you submit, what was it, by 10 a.m., you have to submit to be at the hearing.
No, I'm talking about this.
What's this? What's the deadline we're up against?
Friday.
This Friday? Okay. Vote on it.
Yeah, so I move the resolution to oppose, bill, jumped ahead to the next. The bill in.
Tab 6.
Are you opposing it?
The bill in question, thank you.
There you go.
I move to oppose the bill in question.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, there you go. Moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No. Well, let's do it by hand, you know.
Okay.
Let's do it
Got
by
it.
hand.
All right, the motion fails.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, now, real quick, okay. Letter of support for Family Place charter application for expanding, and this needs a little explanation because I believe Commissioner Miller is proposing that we file the BZA application as an ANC to, well, actually to sponsor the BZA application. Which ANC 1A has never done, but we do have that, we can do it. ANC 1C has done it on several occasions. To file an application for a petitioner, and the reason the ANC would do it is, for instance, Family Place, sorry about that, would have to pay a fee. The ANC does not have to pay a fee. So we'd be saving them the money.
Okay. Can we just say yes?
Can we just vote on it?
We can just vote, and I'm happy to do it. I will just quickly, as fast as possible, and I apologize because you waited all evening to share the amazing work that you're doing. This is a nonprofit that's been in our community for 36 years. They're changing over to a charter, nonprofit switching over to a charter to provide adult vocational services. Their charter application has been accepted. The letter of support is in support of that charter application. So I move that I'm doing the letter of support first. So I move that we approve the letter of support for the Family Place to operate as a public charter school.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
So the second resolution is an issue with the current certificate of occupancy, which is by right, they're allowed public schools, charter schools included. However, because they are considered an adult education and vocational, there needs to be either an exception or a variance to the existing usage. So it's kind of zoning.
It's a zoning variance.
It's a zoning variance. So I move that the ANC support the application for filing the case to the BZA for either the appropriate special exception or variance to allow the Family Place to operate as a charter.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you very much.
Wade, sorry. Commissioner Wade, can you take over for a minute and start the last item?
Ladies and gentlemen, good night.
Good night, Bobby.
If I don't see y'all, y'all know what happened.
Bobby, I want to be on the side. Michael Ray.
So wait. Yeah.
Listen, we just lost out. Bobby, can you wait 1 minute? Okay. When is your date? July 11th. So we can actually do it next month. July, so it gives you enough time for us to close. They won't do that. They won't push it closer. No, because they have to give us the. Okay. All right, so, final item on our agenda for tonight is, BZA case number pending for a special exception for converting an existing two-family property at the premises to a three-family at 3324 Sherman Avenue Northwest. And that's in Commissioner Farmer's, ANC, single-member district. Can I have you come up to the podium, please, and do your presentation?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear our presentation. My name is Caterina Ferreira. I'm an architect, and I am representing 3324 Sherman Avenue LLC, who are the owners of the property, and they are seeking a special exception for converting the existing two-family row house to a three-family, based primarily on the fact that it is an unusually large lot. It is over 3,000 square feet. And there is a requirement for any conversion of a two-family, which is allowable by right in zone RF1, which is the zoning district for the property, that there be 900 square feet of land per unit, which in this case there would be. The project has been designed in every other way to comply with the zoning regulations. So really the relief that we're seeking is to be able to build it as a 3-family instead of a 2-family property. In terms of lot occupancy, setbacks, there is no additional relief required.
All right. Sounds like you've already walked through it, but don't worry, I will quick study.
So she would simply give a presentation because we're going to take action. Mr. Baldwin will be here, and we will have the opportunity to review this, and we will have a forum.
That's perfect. One of the things I will say, and one of the things I would like some input in from the community in particular, is I know this isn't a historic property, but I also know I believe it has an African American heritage sign out front that this was the residence of Charles Drew. And so therefore, I kind of have some concerns about, if there are concerns from the community. He was a very important doctor at Howard.
Well, not just at Howard, but the United States, we discovered blood plasma.
There you go.
It saves everybody's lives.
So I would like to hear some discussion about that and what it means to the community. And if I've got the wrong property, please let me know. It's possible I have the wrong address.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's something that I would have to verify the next time I'm there. I do recall seeing a plaque nearby. I'm not sure if it was at that particular property, but it does ring a bell. Do you know Ben? Ben Tesfaye is also here. He's one of the property owners.
Not to my knowledge, but it's something that we can definitely research, and definitely we want to keep heritages alive in the community, so if there is a significant requirement to use some kind of plaque.
So you're saying it's the property here to the left, not the blue one?
It's not the blue one.
Then yeah, I'm absolutely right, because the plaque is right there on the fence. It's blurry, but it's there.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, it's on the fence.
Yeah, it's a little, you can't read it on the next page, and you can see that it's there.
Yeah, I've actually done quite a bit of work in historic districts and worked with historic landmark buildings.
Like I said, I'm sure this one isn't officially a historic landmark, but it's significant.
Sure.
It would qualify. And I really don't think that you want to have anyone well-meaning throw in a landmark nomination to derail your efforts. So if we can have that as part of a conversation in a way that we work together moving forward, that would be fantastic.
Can I throw in for you that Dr. Charles Drew's daughter, Charlene Drew Jarvis, is one of the original DC council members and probably grew up in that home. So I would be very, I would reach out and make sure about that particular place.
So anyway, I mean, it's a good thing to know before next month. Yes, right?
We can prepare.
Right?
Sure.
Were there any other comments for this one? Okay. Well, thank you for walking us through it. I'm sorry you've been here until 10:16 like the rest of us. And we'll make sure it's on the agenda for next month.
All right, thank you.
Getting to the end of our agenda, I would move that we close this meeting of ANC 1A. Hearing no objection, all in favor. So at 10:16, this meeting is closed.